Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. We are right smack dab in the middle of a super busy stretch within the games industry. We have 4 games to talk about in this episode, and that's not even counting the news or any final thoughts that we have in the run-up to the Super Mario Galaxy movie, which comes out next week. We will hit all of that and more in this episode, and I can't think of anyone better to join me than the man himself, Electric Playground's own Victor Lucas. Victor, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for the introduction there. That's super cool. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I love chatting with you always.
Yeah, it's always great to have, not only somebody who is so knowledgeable, so experienced in this industry. You've been around way longer than I've been around, and I've been around for, 18 years now. You're far more my senior in that regard.
It's a very kind way to tell me that I'm old, but I'll take it. I appreciate that.
I still get, I still see all your posts, you're posting all the Electric Playground, classic footage, and just seeing, some of the interviews and some of the episodes you put on back in, the mid to late 90s, and seeing, it's on this episode, we talked to Shigeru Miyamoto and Ed Boon, and it's oh my, just a murderer's row of guests that you have on any given episode.
It has been a very privileged existence to have found this path and to have been able to just be able to do this and be received warmly and to still continue to be doing this. I'm very grateful. It's amazing.
And you're still feeling the love over on YouTube, where people can see all those not only your new stuff but also your classic episodes. People are still digging it.
Yeah, every week, every time I post the video, new people find it, and I keep saying, "Oh my God, I grew up with this, and where has this been?" There's always that sort of awareness that, "Oh, I remember this," if they're not already subscribed or whatever. But I'm finding that when I post to Instagram or TikTok or Blue Sky or wherever I post video content, because I recognize that people find their silos. And it always warms my heart. A lot of people have been watching for a long, long time, and thank you to those that are. It's awesome. But of course, I still cover all the new stuff that's out there too, and I've been just as busy as you. It's crazy. It's wrapped up on the end of the year stuff and the awards, and then the industry hasn't let off the gas. And I feel like everybody's trying to get their stuff out before Grand Theft Auto 6.
It does feel like everybody made a conscious decision that we're just going to crowd this spring, summer, and early fall as much as possible to avoid that nuclear blast radius that is Grand Theft Auto 6. If it even comes out, because remember,
I know.
Last year,
it might push over, yeah.
Last year, all these developers saw Silk Song get announced, and they're like, "Oh, we got to move." So, multiple developers delayed with the explicit reason of Silk Song, so they avoided that head-on collision, but then unknowingly delayed it to the end of September of last year, and then got into a surprise head-on collision with Hades 2. So it's you kind of run into a lose-lose situation at a certain point.
Yeah.
So, all right. Yeah. Well, I was going to go with, not only somebody who is, so experienced and so knowledgeable in this industry, but also a good friend. So I'm glad to have you on this episode. Glad to call you a friend because, again, you've been doing this work so long and you've been doing it at such a high level for all that time. So it's really cool to have you on this podcast on a semi-regular basis.
You're so kind, man. And it is a pleasure and a privilege to be your pal, man. And anytime you need me on this or wherever you want to hook up for anything, you just reach out. Anything.
Absolutely. We will definitely collaborate across as many things as we possibly can. And also, just meet up at something like Summer Game Fest. Always happy whenever I randomly run into you at Play Days. That's always a pure delight.
Absolutely.
So speaking of both of our tenures in the games industry and, our implied ages as a result of that, I think we're both old enough to remember seeing the original Super Mario Brothers movie, the live action one. With, John Leguizamo, it's not Captain Lou.
Bob Hoskins.
Bob Hoskins. I always want to say Captain Lou, but I know that was the Super Mario Brothers Super Show that he was in.
Yes.
So I remember that and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 as the first 2 movies that I went to where I came out of the theater saying, I don't think that was a good movie. As a young person going into that experience, that theater experience, excited, because Ninja Turtles and the Mario Brothers were my favorite things on the planet at that point in my
Yeah.
life, and emerging
Yeah.
thinking like, I don't think I liked that.
Yeah.
We're in a new era of video game movies, and the Super Mario Brothers movie came out just around 3 years ago.
Hmm.
And I'm assuming you, like much like me, came out of that theater experience much more positive than we did with that live action movie.
I was elated. I just felt like it was so joyful. And I kept thinking of all the young people that were seeing this for the first time. And we know the preponderance of Roblox and iPad gaming and stuff. We know the threats that young players are being besieged by so that they're not becoming Nintendo fans. But everybody has an awareness of Mario. And I have a feeling that the Mario movie may have been the first experience in a Mario story for a lot of younger people. And I just thought of the great victory for Nintendo, and also this pivot opportunity for parents and kids to kind of shift over to the better games that Nintendo makes,
Mm-hmm.
and the permanence that their work has really instilled in culture, and I thought that, it wasn't a perfect narrative story or anything like that, but it was just really, it was lovely. It was just a beautiful film, and it was done with so much heart and so much craft and so much care. I love the collaboration. I was very, very entertained by it, and I had to have the 4K Blu-ray when that came out. I don't buy that many 4K Blu-ray movie discs anymore. I've got a huge collection, so I'm very choosy with what I'm picking up that way. But I had to have that because it's just so absolutely special and spectacular. I can't wait for this new one.
Yeah, so we're about a week out from
Yeah.
the Super Mario Galaxy movie hitting theaters. In fact, next week, the episode will be largely focused on that. I will have a
Right on.
review of the movie ready to go by the time this show usually hits. So that will
Hmm.
be the big talker next week. But
Cool.
Victor, looking ahead, how are
Yeah.
you feeling about the Super Mario Galaxy movie just 1 week out? And I don't want to
I was
before we
really bummed about the
no,
surprise that was revealed
don't.
today.
I am going to
I'm
make a
not going to
conscious
say it.
effort to not spoil that in case any of
I
the
could
listeners are
not
not on
believe it.
social media.
It's the first thing I turned, I opened up Twitter, and it was the first thing that popped up, and I went, "What? Why did you do that?
Why?
I
Like
didn't want to know that."
it's shades of Marvel last year
Yeah.
with Captain America Brave New World just
Hmm.
plastering Red Hulk over all of its marketing materials. But the
Yes.
difference
Yeah.
here is that Marvel has been kind of in a down era, right? Like
Yeah.
after Endgame, it's
Yeah.
kind of been like, a little bit of like the stock ticker going down. And, I think
Right.
that last year was maybe a bright spot because Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four were both quite good. And,
Yep.
this year we have Spider-Man and Daredevil and Doomsday coming out. So like I think
Yep.
that the stock is ticking back up a little bit. So
Yep.
I understand from Marvel's perspective being like, all right, we gotta like, even though it's a surprise twist in the third act, like we're gonna market the heck out of this because people miss like a savage Hulk in our MCU. I
Sure.
understand that from a marketing
And it was Harrison
perspective,
Ford.
and it was Harrison Ford. I just
Yeah.
wish they didn't because I mean, my fiance, I watched it with her like months after it came out on digital. I went to theaters and saw it, and then I'm plugged into the Marvel stuff
Me too.
all the
Me
time.
too. I was
I never.
disappointed in that movie, but there was some cool stuff in it, and that was the cool thing. And you're right. Why reveal that?
But I get it because they needed to get people in the theaters. The
Yeah.
difference with Mario Galaxy, this is the follow-up to
Yeah.
one of the most successful animated movies of all time. There's
Well,
not
here's
been.
my prediction, Brian.
Yeah,
I think this one is going to be the most successful animated film of all time.
I
I
think
think
so
that
too.
I think Mario has been in rotation in a lot of people's homes. People have just been playing it over and over again. They can watch it in a bunch of different ways. It's such a great go-to chill, smile, laugh. I mean, especially if you just want to forget about the noise in the world and just go into this beautiful cartoony world. It's amazing.
Mhm.
And it brought so much, I don't know, fun into people's lives. And there's been a massive suite of successful games from Nintendo over that time. We saw how successful Switch 1 was. Switch 2, I know that the news on the 30% cutback is fuel to kind of throw some Switch 2 hate out there, but it's killing it. It's selling like crazy. And the banger games are going to start flooding to this machine. We're going to start seeing all kinds of incredible Nintendo stuff, but also really cool third-party stuff too. And so like there's a lot of just a lot of love just surrounding and propelling the launch of Super Mario Galaxy movie. And I think it's going to be great. And I think it's going to be a better movie than the first one.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have a lot of nice hooks, and I think it's going to do 2 billion plus, at the box office.
Wow, 2 billion.
Yep.
That's a lofty number. I do think, so what, Zootopia 2 is currently the highest grossing animated film ever, right?
I think it hit like almost 2, if it's like
that was
like
a
1.9
massive
or
success.
I know. And that Zootopia, what a world. There is an incredible behind the scenes story. Malcolm Gladwell did a whole podcast on the making of Zootopia. That's all I'm going to say. But you should track that down. There's a whole sort of interesting backstory on the Zootopia phenomenon. But I love the first one. I thought the second one was okay. It was better than okay. It was good, but it wasn't as good as the first film. The first film was amazing. But that's the perfect example. People have been watching Zootopia 1 over and over and over again. Similar, lots of background details, lots of little Easter eggs in that first film in Zootopia, and same with Mario. Mario's got all of these great little threads and Easter eggs, and let's see what they pull on for the sequel here.
And there's so many ways that you can onboard into the Mario franchise.
Yes.
Like you could get my nephews got into it through the movie, right? Like they didn't go to the theaters. They're too young at that point, but like in the time since, they've watched it on repeat. And now I bet they're going to be going to the theaters to see the second one. So like, I think this is going to be a home run, which circles me back to my point of Universal didn't have to spoil this character's inclusion. No. Like people were going to go see this movie regardless. Like, yeah, it's a big thing, but they could have done what Marvel has done sometimes where like a week afterwards, they share a thing that says this character is in this.
Well, and I mean, I don't want to spoil but I'm not spoiling who the character is, what the character is, but the character is a big character, but a big character for a specific audience out there. They're already getting the tickets to go see this thing, So they spoiled something for people that won't appreciate why it's being in why they spoiled it.
And it would have been
like, it was silly.
It would have been a genuinely big moment in the theater when that happened.
For people that know the world and know so absolutely.
We're not going to spoil it here, but I mean, if you've been on social media, it is completely unavoidable. There was a moment
everywhere.
I was on Instagram, and I think that it was 4 posts from 4 different accounts in a row shared. I scrolled. Oh, there it is. There it is. There it is. There it is. Like 4 full swipes to get past that poster. It's an official poster. It's not a leak or anything like that.
No,
it is an officially released poster starring this character. So we're
in media, you and I, like we cover this stuff and we talk to people that make these cool things. And you're a super fan for everything like I am. Mm-hmm. Isn't it a freaking drag sometimes to like find out this stuff? And it's like, no, I don't want to know. There's been stuff that's been coming. I don't know if it was a Marvel movie or whatever, but I've found myself just so pissed off at some of our colleague, brands out there that have released something. And I'm unfollowing you. No, I'm just like, I get so angry that it's something gets spoiled. But then, I try my best in my reviews to, dance around stuff. When I do movie reviews, I just use the trailer footage or a little, stuff that's been released. And I don't reveal more than that. But sometimes it's a real dance. And sometimes the game is in this attention economy is just to get that scoop as soon as possible, and I can't stand the pictures from sets. That drives me crazy.
Oh no, I hate that. And it sucks because I love going on YouTube and watching like people who break down trailers, and they're like, oh, like the Spider-Man Brand New Day trailer came out. Let's break down all the little like hints and everything that are in every scene. And I love that
movie
stuff.
Looks amazing.
It
does. God, I can't wait for that. Yeah.
So I'm watching that, and then suddenly they're like, oh, and this indicates because of the leaked like set photos that we've seen. I'm like, no, don't go there. Like, give me just talk about the official stuff. Like, I don't know it. I don't know. I don't know where I'm
It's
going with
got
that.
to be a tough haul right now for marketers, and I feel you, advertisers and marketers out there. You don't have an easy job. Nobody's making the budgets that they expect they should make. Every once in a while we get these breakout things, but like Project
Hail
Hail
Mary.
Mary is amazing, and I think it cracked 80 million, which is huge for a new property, but it's a really big, great movie, and it should have done a lot more,
I
but
keep
people
meaning
are
to make it
happy.
out to an IMAX to see that because I heard it's unbelievable in IMAX.
Yeah, it's a great film. But nobody's hitting those marks like unless you're Christopher Nolan or, you're a known entity or a
Yeah.
sequel or something like that. We're really in a weird space right now where everything is just trying to crack through, trying to get some attention. But there's so much, man. Like we've never been in an era, and thank God they killed Sora. Thank
Yeah.
God we're not just going to have more AI slop of everything. Because that was the other that was like the shoe dropping there. It's like, oh my god, no, we are already oversaturated with things to pay attention to, and now you're going to make fake things to pay attention. No, thank you.
Yeah. We've
Yeah.
never been at less of a content deficit than we are currly in
Totally.
human history.
Yes.
And yeah, I
Yeah, dude,
how many
I'm a
streaming
little
services
older
do I
than
pay
you.
for?
I'm older than you, and so back in the '80s, like after Star Wars had hit theaters, and we waited 3 years for Empire and another 3 years for Return of the Jedi. All we had were the comic books and the Starlog magazines. We didn't have this suite of other shows and movies and things. And now, like, there's nostalgia for. Like, I sometimes want to rewatch The Mandalorian or jump right back into, a Marvel film from 15 years ago or something like that, and because we're just moving so quickly and there's new project after new project like crazy. But back then we had to wait and we had to ruminate and we had to think and we had to kind of, people dissect trailers. We used to dissect these movies on VHS and look at all the backgrounds and the corners and read about them and all that stuff. It's very different now, man. We just don't have time to breathe. It's like you were saying, we're on to the next thing right away.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, I'm rewatching the full run of Daredevil right now because
Right.
I wanted to get reacclimated, and also getting my fiance caught up on it because she never watched the original.
Yep.
So
Amazing
it's like
show.
it's amazing. We're almost to the end of season 1, which has one of the coolest finales of any Marvel show ever. So I'm
Amazing
excited
show.
for that. But
we're so bloody. That's the other thing. We're so spoiled. Like there is too much, but the quality of everything is so freaking good. People come at me all the time, like, why do you like all the things that you review? And because I review, lots of different games and stuff, but games are really good. Like it's kind of rare for a mind's eye to come out. It's kind of rare for like really crappy things to go through all the processes to actually make it to market. And there's so much good stuff that's what I tend to gravitate to in the time that I have,
Yeah, there are definitely a higher percentage of good games coming out now than there were back in like the 90s or 2000s or any other decade, really, because like I mean, there's plenty of development catastrophes that you hear about, but like a lot of the games that don't end up being good just never make it to market.
They don't, and the studios close, and that's the difference, which I regret, because I feel like it was a healthier industry when companies could come out with a 6 out of 10 and still get to make a next game, and I think that iteration has borne some beautiful fruit. There's been some excellent games. Like Grand Theft Auto 3 was not a predictable outcome from Grand Theft Auto 1. Burnout 3 was not what you envisioned when we just reviewed Burnout 1 on EP Classic, and it was pretty good, but Burnout 3 melted my freaking eyeballs. Like I could not believe that game existed when I played it. I was, what the heck? I was so blown away by that game.
God,
and
we need that series back.
Yeah, and you need the developers. You need to give them a little time to cook. I think that's what's going to bring it back to Mario Galaxy. I think that's going to bring it. That's going to be a part of this movie too. They've had time to cook. They've had time to, none of that relational stuff that they've had to kind of get comfortable with Nintendo and where they wanted to go with it. None of that's going to be there now. Like all bets are off. They're going to build something wonderful, I think.
I sure hope so. And we will find out next week. That is when
Yep.
Super Mario Galaxy movie arrives in theaters. And as I mentioned, we will be talking about it all over next week's podcast. But we're
Cool.
going to transition over to the news. But first, a reminder that this show is brought to you by the fine folks who support me on Patreon. Without them, this show literally would not exist. You can get access to the community Discord for as little as $3 a month. We are over there talking Nintendo and the latest gaming news all day long. But there are also $5 and $10 tiers to get you early and ad-free episodes, plus shout-outs at the end of every show. You can join the team that makes this show happen by going to patreon.com and searching for Brian Shea or All Things Nintendo. It is only because of the fine folks who support me over there that I'm able to keep going as an independent entity week after week. All right, so Victor, we're going to jump into some news, and we're going to start with some news about Nintendo itself. So the company has announced that starting with Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, which comes out May 21st, physical games are going to cost more than the digital versions that you can buy on the eShop. So here in the US, Yoshi and the Mysterious Book will cost $60 digitally and $70 if you want a physical copy from the Nintendo store. And Nintendo does say that stores that are not them can ultimately charge whatever they want. So like if Walmart wants to charge 60 for the physical to be competitive, they are open to do that. But I cannot imagine that like other stores are going to deviate too much once like, you know, the company itself is selling it for higher at that MSRP. So
Right.
Victor, are you like pretty much full digital like me at this point, or do you still pick up games from like an actual store?
Well, I'm digital because I'm a reviewer. And it's just the way that it works in the industry. If we're going to get access to early code, it's just way more efficient for the studios to send you a code, a couple of weeks or a month or however early you can get something. Earlier the better, by the way. Anybody that's working in press out there, these games are big, or in PR out there. But I strongly believe that physical should be a very important present and future for the video game industry. I think that it's incredibly powerful to hold something in your hand and to look at the art and to look at the way that it was all crafted. I think instruction books should come back as well.
Oh, yeah.
I think that the idea that this effort that it takes like years of effort, sometimes decades of effort, or a decade of effort to build this work of art and to just make it an icon on a digital store or on your front end is so reductive, and it turns this beautiful art into such an ephemeral piece of media, and it's also directly connected to the way that we consume television shows or movies or music or whatever. And video games are not that. They're truly little toys that developers build for us, complete with characters that we control and worlds that we explore however we choose to. And part of that experience should also be physicalized, and I think that there's a tremendous value there. But the other side of physical is that retail store experience or that convention experience, because a lot of this stuff ends up, retailers have footprints at conventions or whatever, or there's a used market or whatever. That is invaluable community building. That is like the exponential marketing around the value of the medium. And the industry has done so much damage to that, and they've cut back on that. It's not so much that the sales justify the expense of all of the cost to ship and which makes sense with some of the price changes and stuff. But it's that there are these dots, these shrines across the world where people gather to go in and check out what's on shelves and talk about new games and see posters on the wall and see these games on shelves, and they pick it up and it's a tactile experience. It's a community experience. They're vocalizing and expressing what they think about and what they care about and what they're enjoying. That shouldn't be lost. I think that has done a tremendous service for the growth of games, and the idea that games are something that is culturally relevant. And I think the sales, the sales figures really kind of showcase that. I don't think that we are selling necessarily millions more now that we are shifting over to digital. I think we're probably selling around the same amount as we used to sell in-store shelves, but now nobody leaves their homes. And if
Mhm.
nobody leaves their homes and nobody sees game content out in the world, are people sort of encouraged to communicate around game content with other people? I don't think they are. And so
Mhm.
I think we've got all these different silos that are happening, and you can trace it right back to the idea that video games just want to keep you locked in into an ecosystem or into a little bubble where you're clicking on things. And I think there's so much bloody value with walking up to an item on the shelf and picking it up and smiling to somebody that's shopping beside you and talking about how much you enjoy that. I don't think we should lose that. It works, I think, a little bit better for uh, you know media that you just consume, passive entertainment, movies and TV shows and stuff like that. I think that's fine because that is an ephemeral experience. It's a momentary thing. But games are not that. They're much longer, but you also revisit them over and over and over again. There's
Mhm.
probably closer to a book or a great record than a movie experience where it's just consume and then you talk about it later. No, a game is like, I'm going to try it this way. I'm going to finish Resident Evil 9 and I'm going to start it again and I'm going to talk about that. Anyways, so long answer, but I do consume stuff digitally because I consume so much, but and I talk about so many things, but I really strongly believe in the power of physical.
So, what's your read on this situation with Nintendo raising, or at least changing the price of the physical copies to be mismatched from digital? Because on the surface, I've thought that this is how it should have worked from the start, because we should
Yeah.
be saving the savings of not having to physically produce these games and then ship them to stores and stock shelves and everything. I do
Yep.
think that should be passed on to the consumer, but like it traditionally has not.
I think as long as there's transparency around the pricing structure, and right now we've got an energy crisis that's happening, and I think that's going to affect all kinds of shipping costs and manufacturing costs around the world.
I just saw
We've had a
the USPS just installed a surcharge for packages now. They
Yeah.
just
I
announced
mean,
that.
it's going to
So
get worse before it gets better. I don't see a resolution happening anytime soon. And we've had a tariff crisis,
mhm.
the last little while. And so anybody that's manufacturing goods has had to grapple with that. And I think we've seen pricing already increase around the world because of that. And that's incredibly unfortunate because it just creates pressure for the corporations, the investors in those companies that want to sell to more people, the consumer base. None of that is good. And so I see that Nintendo's probably looking at this as uh, a thing that has to happen to accommodate all of this. But the other thing that it does is that it de-anchors these experiences from each other so that game prices in a physical form can become pricier, which I can probably, especially as the market shrinks on physical, I can see that because less will be made, that those will probably go up. But I also see the other side of it is that digital prices can drop and sales can happen quicker, and there's going to be some new ways to get people in. And I personally think that video games have been too expensive for too long. Anyways, I thought that back in PS3 360 era. I feel like the industry should do more to bring more people in,
Mhm.
and pricing is a huge component of that. The pricing on video games, which should be essential, which you and I know, and everybody listening to this podcast right now knows, it should be essential entertainment for everyone. And there is a game for everyone, but the pricing really
It's a
detracts from that.
it's a steep barrier of entry.
It really is. And
It's
that's
an
why free to
expensive
play
hobby.
has grown and become this infectious disease in our industry and has really tarnished what we think about the value of experiences in games. I've thought free to play when it first started to happen on the App Store was like, oh, okay, that's very, very interesting. But then I've grown to realize that no. And I was at that 2011 Iwata keynote at GDC where he said, look, this is the race to the bottom. If we don't put a value on these entertainments, then everybody's going to think they're valueless. And that's exactly what's happened. And it's saturated and there's just so much garbage. I would get so pissed off walking down the airplane aisle and seeing everybody playing
Candy
uh,
Crush.
Candy Crush. Yeah. It's like, what are you doing? There's a million other awesome games to spend your time in. But I think games have been too expensive. And I think the industry there's a lot of stuff to grapple with right now. I think they're too expensive to make. They're too expensive to. So once the industry gets through this, I think the industry needs to have and Nintendo could be leading a charge here. They could be saying, okay, physical, not everybody wants to get out. Not everybody wants to go to the store, but the people that do really want those collections will spend more. Nintendo's got to, I think, service the people that don't want the key card and want the whole thing on the cartridge a little bit more. And I think Nintendo I think Sony and Xbox should follow suit with that. But maybe what starts to happen here is there's a little more clarity on pricing. There's a little more clarity on the commitment to physical. And yes, the deals on digital should be more prominent, and people should be able to jump in, pick up a subscription on their console, because each one of the subscriptions for each of the different consoles makes a lot of sense financially. So they've got tons of games to play, but then they can also buy some excellent games at a very, very good discount price. I think that's incredibly important. And Steam has won because of that. Let's be honest. Steam has been this unbelievable catch-all for value. If you have the rig to handle the games on PC, your per game price is going to be a lot less, because they can have these sales all the time.
The sales, the bundles, all that stuff is incredible. Like, I have more games than I will ever have time to play. And I hopefully still have many years to go in this life. So, I don't see that changing anytime soon, because I also don't see the fact that I peruse my wish list on the eShop and on Steam almost every single day and see what's on sale and what's not. And then it's like, oh, that's only $3 now. I'm going to pick that up. Maybe I'll play it one day, and then it sits in my library unplayed for about 15 years. And then maybe one day I'll pick it up. Who knows? That's the way it works. But
so you're fully digital? You're not a physical guy anymore?
Yeah, it started off as everything handheld was digital, because I didn't want to lug around like 3DS cases in my backpack.
Yes.
I was like, all right, I'm just going to download all my 3DS games. I'll buy a super chunky SD card, throw it in there, and then just have every game with me. And that was like the start of it. And I was like, wow, this really is convenient. And early on in like the Xbox One, PS4 era, I was like trying to hold on to like digital, but then Nintendo went, hey, we're going to put out a system that's, handheld and home console. And that was the beginning of the end for me with any kind of physical. It's only like collector's editions that I really have physical copies of, because they come with
I do have FOMO though.
copy.
I do have FOMO when I see YouTubers with their beautiful walls of red, because the Switch was such a huge proponent of physical cartridges. So there's everybody that loves that physical stuff has a huge Nintendo Switch collection, and I do have FOMO when I see that. I have a small Switch collection, but it looks cool, man. I don't know who's the guy. GameSack has this word for it. He calls it shelf candy. And I think that's such a great observation. It is shelf candy, man. It is part of your identity a little bit.
Yeah, if you love the wall of games, you would have loved the Game Informer vault that we had before we were shut down. It was just wall to wall, organized by platform, all kinds of different relics in there. We had the
EP's
PC
got
wall,
that too, bro.
Oh my God, it was incredible.
We got that too. I know.
I miss it, but we'll be talking a little bit more about the state of the industry at the tail end of this news segment. But keeping with Nintendo, now that Super Mario Bros. Wonders expansion is out, which we will be talking about in the main segment of this episode, Nintendo has very obviously started to turn its promotional sights towards its next big release, which is Tomodachi Life: Living the Dream.
Yep.
And Victor, were you a fan of the original Tomodachi Life on 3DS?
I go back and forth on these sim type games. I have the game, and I'm going to be starting it to review pretty soon. I go back and forth. It took me a while to really sync with Animal Crossing, and part of me to falling in love with it was definitely the slowdown time during the pandemic, and I do genuinely love it. It was an amazing release, and re-experiencing it recently with the Nintendo Switch 2 edition has been really fun. I absolutely love Pocopia.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. There's something. It's such an incredible game. Like the mystery and the finding of the different Pokemon everywhere. It's such a great. And I love Dragon Quest Builders. I loved The Sims for a long time. But then there always comes a time where it's like, well, you're taking care of these little virtual lives at the expense of my real life. Like I've been in this game for 10 hours right now. And it's like, I need to put this away. It's a little different. There's beauty in it, but it's a little different when the adventure is smaller and it's more about keeping your characters happy and placated. And in the Sims case, you have to have a job, or, you're mowing your lawn and Animal Crossing, whatever, and, it's different than, let's say, what are we playing? Crimson Desert right now, where it's like I'm fighting these huge monsters, or I'm learning how to fly in my, my cool new sort of sci-fi, my fantasy kind of infusion that I have within the game, and I've got all these cool weapons and stuff. It's a little different, right? It feels much bigger and much more fantasy fueled than these life sims.
Well,
But I want to go to it. I want to check it out. I want to get lost in it.
The good thing about Tomodachi Life is it's less about, keeping these people alive, or like, controlling them in their day-to-day stuff. It's more about, you put people with different personalities. Like every me that you create, you give a different personality. And like, it's like a few different sliders and everything. And you basically are just putting them on this island, or in the town that the original one was on, and letting them interact. And like, you poke your head in every once in a while and be like, oh, what are these guys doing together? Oh, wow, this is some crazy stuff happening here. And it leans so heavily into the zaniness that, like, the joy is in the interactions and the weird, unsettling text to voice that it uses. But it is so charming. And the original Tomodachi Life on 3DS is a top 5 3DS game for me, because it's
awesome.
Such a joyful, weird, and like always hilarious experience. And everything I've seen about Tomodachi Life Living the Dream, which I also have for review, but I have not fired it up quite yet.
Yeah. Because we're busy as hell with what's currently happening.
I mean, you'll hear why when it comes to the main segment of this podcast.
Yeah.
But if people want to check out this new Tomodachi Life Living the Dream on Switch 2, ahead of its April 16th release date, there is now a new demo on the Switch eShop. Tomodachi Life Living the Dream Welcome Version demo. You can save your Miis that you create and transfer them over to the full version when the game comes out. So that's kind of become my, like, unless I'm doing something for like coverage, I won't play a demo anymore unless I can transfer my save data over to the main version. I just don't have time to replay the same like few hours of the same game.
I'm right there with you. I generally want to have the full experience too. I kind of want to see the whole game. I'm psyched to try it out. And I think what Nintendo has done, and it speaks to this idea of sticking with it, right? Like, that's one of the things that makes Nintendo so special. They invest in the weird and the small, and they treat every kooky concept that they come up with the same level of love and care and craft as their AAA stuff, and they unveil it like it's a gift, like, here's our latest thing, and we hope you enjoy it, and sometimes it sells like 100,000 units, and then they make a sequel to it, and maybe it does 500,000, and then, like Fire Emblem, we saw that launch and it was super cool, but it took time for people to kind of really turn it into a mega hit, And I think this one actually was very successful. The 3DS game, I remember people raving about it. One of the things, and you can kind of understand this, is that when you're reviewing a lot of things, you kind of swing to the next vine, like you're playing stuff and it's like, okay, well, I got to move on. Bye, game. I don't think I'll ever see you again. I gotta, which is
heartbreaking
sometimes. Me. Yeah, but it's the job is to kind of show the next and show what's new, So sometimes these massive sim games, and this is why I feel that, if I wasn't in this career, if I wasn't in this job, I would probably have more time to just sort of soak this up and just stay with this thing. And man, I was talking about this on the stream I was doing on our channel today. It's just like, there's so many games that you want to go back to. Like there's new Mega Man content in Sonic Racing Cross Worlds right now. And I don't currently have it scheduled, but I really want to check it out. It's just sometimes hard to not only to stay with something that just doesn't have an end, but also to go back and revisit something that you really loved because it has new content.
Yeah, I mean, it's very rare that I will play a live service game because that, I mean, sometimes I'll play it and just see like the story content and then be done with it, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
Overwatch was a rare exception for me where I put in over 1,000 hours into Overwatch.
Wow.
And it's so rare that I play a live service game unless it's on my phone. Like I play Clash Royale every once in a while, and it's like that's the
Still, you're
only.
still playing that?
I stopped for about 6 years, and then I was playing Marvel Strike Force religiously for about 7.5 years.
Yeah.
And I finally kicked that to the curb, and I was like, well, I want something on my phone. I have Balatro on my phone, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But like,
That is cool.
I was
You know,
like,
they
yeah,
put Ball Pit on the phone.
I did that. Yes, that's right. I did see that.
Yeah.
Which I still would be like Team Balatro or Vampire Survivors over Ball Pit, but Ball Pit is
Sure.
fantastic as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where I just don't unfortunately have time to keep up with every live service game because it's just a constant just like drip feed of content. And it's like I've
Yeah.
already moved on. I've gone on to like 3 games since the last time I fired this game up and there was new content. So
Yeah.
which is actually a perfect segue into the next
I was
item.
just thinking that. Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about a Marvel collection in the next segment, but IGN actually got a scoop from an interview with Marvel Games' Danny Koo while at GDC, who told them that they are currently working on a Switch 2 version of Marvel Rivals. So
Okay.
Victor, you and I think that if anybody is watching the video version, they can see that we are fans of Marvel and comic book stuff. Have
Big
you jumped
time.
into Marvel Rivals?
I have, and God darn it, I didn't want to swear. It is beautiful. It is a beautiful game. I don't feel I don't feel, you know what it is? I don't feel, because it's meant to be so live service. I haven't played it enough that I know all of its intricacies or if all the new tweaks or anything like that. But I was blown away by the art. Love the character designs. But I felt like the hits when I was blasting at different characters, they didn't really satisfy me. You know, it didn't feel like it didn't feel like Overwatch. It didn't feel like Destiny. It's okay in terms of the contextual, damage that you're doing on the different opponents. But the story, I think, is the characters and, to some degree, the environmental art and stuff like that. I just think it's a great collection of, these beloved Marvel superheroes. I think it's really a beautiful celebration of all that. I do, however, wish that it was just a paid game and you got all the characters and they weren't thinking about seasons and all that stuff. I think it would be for me. And probably what would have happened is I would have stuck with it, reviewed it after, 40 hours or something like that, and then moved on. But that the whole business model is not that. They want you for hundreds of hours and for you to check in every day and to make friends with people online. And I get it. And I think that's one of the games in the live service space that kind of justifies itself and makes sense because of that, because of the familiarity. And it's also one of those games where it's like, well, how does anybody else come up with something to compete against that? They have all the Marvel heroes in there,
Yeah, it's so funny how this is a game geared so perfectly towards me. As somebody who poured a ton of hours into Overwatch, I probably would be playing Marvel Rivals now if Overwatch didn't do this big overhaul that they did like 2 months ago. Because now that's like the only thing that I fire up now. If I just have like some spare time, I'll fire up Overwatch.
No
again.
Marathon, no Arc Raiders for you?
I haven't jumped into either of those. I've never
I
done
really
an
like them,
extraction
but
shooter.
they're really fun. But I'm right with you, man. It's like, I don't know. I'm also like a big champion for games with endings.
Yeah.
I think that games with endings are good for the business.
Yeah. So I feel like I should, like every time I talk about Marvel Rivals, they just announced this big like lead up where they're going to be doing like the lead up to Doomsday this year, where it's like right now I think they're doing like all this content based on the original Avengers movie, and then like in the summer they're doing an Age of Ultron movie like content, and then early fall will be Infinity War, and then Endgame, and then right when Doomsday hit they'll have all this Doomsday content, which seems like such a home run and such a great way to like get people who are like maybe not the biggest like Marvel Rivals fans interested in this, because it's certainly working on me where I'm like looking over the fence like, oh man, that looks really cool.
Those are the skins I buy in Fortnite. Like I just bought Iron Man. Well, I used my V-Bucks as part of an Xbox Game Pass subscriber, you get V-Bucks. So I used some of that, and I had Fantastic Four and Superman skins. So, and I don't know, because I don't jump into Marvel Rivals on a consecutive basis, but do you get all the characters, or is it just about customization of the characters that they're making their money?
I think so, but I also could be wrong there because I haven't played since the launch window of Marvel
Okay.
Rivals, and like I think it was just everybody was included in the base game. But I thought
Right.
that they had told me when I played it at Summer Game Fest back in like 2024 that
Yeah.
they were planning on keeping all the characters free. I don't know if
Right.
that has changed in the time since. I mean, that was 6 months before launch, so I
Because
don't know.
I mean, I see that becoming a financial issue because here's my thinking on this, and this is true for Marvel Ultimate Alliance and lots of other things too, where you can customize your character. I like the costumes that I know. I like
Yeah.
the costumes that they come with. Like they're based on something. It's like that. I'm just going to keep that. I'm not going to buy a hat for the thing. Like no, that's. I'm just gonna. I'm not going to buy like a freaking new pair of shoes for the Hulk. It's like no, this is what I want right there.
Yeah. Even on Marvel's Avengers, which was a pretty substantial failure for Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics, I
Yeah.
enjoyed the story mode of that.
Me
I
too.
hated the
Me
live
too.
service stuff, but the stuff that I was interested in were the things where it's like, okay, well, here's the Captain America Winter Soldier outfit
Yeah.
for Captain America. And I'm like, okay, I want that because it looks like the version of the character that I'm most familiar with.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
I loved Ms. Marvel in the
I did
Avengers.
too.
I love Marvel video games. We're to talk about the collection here, but I love those characters in video games, especially Spider-Man. He's just such an incredible character.
Yes, and they all have such great abilities and personalities that work together in gaming. Like it feels like they were designed for gaming in a lot of
Big
ways.
time.
And we'll talk about that when we talk about the Marvel Maximum collection in the main segment here. But
One thing about the Rivals game, though, for
yes,
Switch 2, is that because they didn't spec it like crazy, they didn't go over the top and try to get photoreal with anything. It's going to be a great looking fit on Switch 2.
I sure
And I
hope
think
so.
it's going to be a lot of new people coming aboard for that. And I'm honestly, uh, I could see myself in a hotel room somewhere and just log on my Switch 2 in handheld mode and play that for a little bit. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I would be as well, but I do need to get into it, man. Like every time I talk
Yeah.
about it, I'm like, I should fire that up, and then I get caught up in the 7 other games that I need to play for work
Yeah.
or for this podcast.
I mean, the biggest thing for me is the combat didn't feel as satisfying as lots of other, and the characters and the art were amazing, and the voice quips, all of it is just like top tier production. But just the way that the things hit, I just was like, I don't know, it just felt so thin.
Yeah,
Maybe it's better now. I got to check it out too.
Maybe. Again,
Yeah.
I would like to check it out. It's been a year and a half since I've really put any amount of time into it, or almost a year and a half, I guess. But I'll keep everyone in the loop when we learn more about the Switch 2 version of Marvel Rivals. But we do have an announcement for a game that we highlighted last week on this very podcast. We know when it's coming out now, and it's next week. Super Meat Boy 3D was one of my favorite games that I played at GDC, and we got an Xbox partner preview live stream this week, and along with that came a release date for every platform coming out March 31st. Victor, have you followed the trajectory of the Super Meat Boy franchise? Because it is complicated and a little bit of a roller coaster.
I mean, I played the original. I got to know
Edmund
Edward.
McMillan.
Edmund, yeah, and got to know him a little bit. Loved the original. I don't know who developed the 3D version of it, but it looks really fun. It looks like
Team
it's
Meat,
true.
but Edmund is no longer with the company.
Yeah, Edmund's not there. Yeah, it does look like a lot of fun. It does look like it stayed true. I love the trailer that dropped with the release date announcement. I thought it was hilarious with the guy just destroying his room. That's so indicative of the rage that we all feel in a game like that. I'm psyched to try it. There was this excellent robot variation of that. It was called Bzzzt.
Right,
and
yeah.
It was like because it totally borrowed from Super Meat Boy. It's the 2D version, and I had loved that game. I thought Bzzzt was just so freaking cool. Again, it's a very small team, pixel art, great Switch pickup. So I'm into this. Progress, one screen at a time, as far as you can, one level at a time, and deal with all of the traps and the violence of it all. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to hit Game Pass. But
Yes.
what was interesting about the Xbox partner preview is every other console was on every trailer. It was on every other thing. And when did the industry start doing that? I think
Yeah,
it's
I
only
appreciate
Xbox.
it. Because PlayStation, they'll be like, here's an announcement of a game you've never seen before coming to PlayStation 5 later this year. And then you get, oh, okay, so PlayStation got this big game that's coming out. And then you get the press release. It's like coming to PS5, Xbox Series X, Switch 2, and PC. And you're like,
Yeah,
I
I
wish I would
know.
have had that information before.
Maybe that will start to change with PlayStation. Who knows? I do want this kumbaya kind of, we're all in this together. We can't have these silos. We need to kind of support each other. Keeley got that to happen with Sean and Reggie and Phil at
Mm-hmm.
the Game Awards, years ago. And I think we need a little bit more of that. A little bit more of like, let's figure this out together.
I did get to not only see Phil a couple weeks ago at GDC, ran into
Hmm.
him, chatted with him for a little bit, just talking to him, just like being like, hey, congrats on the retirement. And, like, I don't know if you do have something planned next. And he was like, no, I've got nothing planned next. I'm like, good for you. And he was like, I've been
Yeah,
here for 38 years. I'm done. And I'm like, well, what are you doing with your spare time? And he goes, a whole lot of snowboarding. And I'm
very
like, all right,
cool.
even better than like, go for it, man. Like, enjoy the time that you've earned. But I also got to meet Asha, the new CEO of Xbox. I not only
Cool.
ran into her at the like this Xbox event that was happening. It was kind of like an unannounced arrival of Phil and Asha together, but
Hmm.
also got to attend a small breakfast with her and some of the Xbox people. And I can't talk about some of the stuff that was discussed there, but it was it was refreshing that she had such an eagerness
Yeah.
to learn and to take in any kind of discussions and feedback surrounding the Xbox brand. So
I
yeah,
mean, they have so many lives under their purview. They have all these studios, all of these intellectual properties, all of this potential, all of this opportunity, and all we see get thrown around in the social media spheres is the success or death of company A, or B. Xbox has been the subject of that for a big time, a long time. They're done, they're dead, they're done. But they're a multi-trillion-dollar owned company from Microsoft. They have lots
mhm.
of resources. Games aren't going anywhere. They just need to figure out a way to reach more people and make more money. And I think some of the attitudes, some of the ideas that they had, the philosophies of bringing games wherever people had a screen are kind of sound. But they also have an established audience out there that wants to feel like they're special too.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. I mean, that's their thing to figure out. But one of the topics I think that definitely needs to come up with however they deal with it. And it's interesting we're talking about Xbox and a Nintendo thing, but Xbox is going to be a big publisher on Nintendo. They're going to be a big partner for Nintendo because they own all of these studios. But I think one of the things that they definitely need to consider is how long games are and how
Yeah.
much they cost. And they can make some real changes there. They could make some really big moves that change the business. And then if they do this partnership with Netflix that's being rumored about, and they can kind of figure out a better offer on Game Pass and find new ways to reach people through that, it could be very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things happening in the world of the platform holders right now. We just
Yeah,
got a new president of Nintendo of America as well. And it's like,
right.
man, there's just a lot of leadership turnover lately. Where we talked about Xbox a few weeks ago, I guess, at this point, where they lost not only their CEO but also Sarah Bond, who has been with them
Yeah,
forever as well. And I mean, there was a lot of people who are still there and have been at Microsoft and Xbox for decades. But it's also like maybe we're going to enter a kind of a new dawn of the way that these platforms are approached. And I mean, it could go either way, because we've also seen PlayStation talk about maybe dialing back, bringing their first party games to other platforms, specifically PC.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to extend to coming over to Switch. I don't know if that's going to mean that like Microsoft might follow suit. I mean, Phil, I don't think would have ever dialed it back, but we don't know what this new leadership is going to do.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, the feedback from the Xbox faithful has been loud and clear that like, hey, I dropped $500 on an Xbox Series X back in 2020 with the promise that this is going to be the only place to play Halo. This is the only place to play Gears of War, the only place to play Forza Horizon. And now they're all on PlayStation. Like, why did I spend money on this? Why didn't I spend my money on the PlayStation instead?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that that is going to really shape whatever Project Helix, which is the next console that they've announced that they are working on, whatever
Yep.
that will be. I think that that feedback is going to be part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's. I mean, I've tweeted this, but I really do feel like part of Xbox's future as a distinctive platform is to honor their past and to make their previous games accessible, go back into their IP that they have that has been squandered, like MechAssault and Crimson Skies, and kind of celebrate their longevity. It's honestly like Nintendo's a different thing. Like they're their own ecosystem, but they kind of show the market how to treat and care for what they make in the not always most consumer friendly way. Like I feel like you should be able to purchase the classic games if you want to, like we used to be able to on the you know the virtual console.
Mm-hmm.
But they, like I talked about, they bring out their properties with a lot of love and craft and care. They're not afraid to get weird. They're not afraid to go small. They're not afraid to bring the freaking Virtual Boy back. I mean, they just are, they're a game company, you know? They're not trying to take over every aspect of, you know, social media. Which I feel Xbox and PlayStation sometimes they get their head in the clouds a little bit like that.
Yeah.
They're thinking about all the, which is funny because, you know, movies and theme parks and all that stuff came to Nintendo, but it wasn't like they were out there actively like, we got to expand into all these different things. And when they've tried that, they've got burned. That's what happened with the first Mario. And still they might, like the Zelda movie may end up freaking people out. Who knows? But they never lose sight of like, we begin and we end with our video games. That's what we are. And with PlayStation, they're a division of Sony, incredibly important, probably the most profitable, probably the most important part of Sony, truthfully. And Xbox is a tiny little chunk of what matters to Microsoft. But it's important. And I do think that people should really, I don't know, look to all of the effort and work and goodwill that many decisions have been made over the years to make video games matter to a lot of people and figure out how to honor them, you know? And so I think if Xbox Helix were to come out and say, look, we have this optional disk drive, any of your old Xbox 360 or Xbox One, original Xbox games that you might have in your collection, pop them into that disk drive, it'll work, it'll play. Don't worry about the licensing, we're taking care of all that. We have the lawyers and the money and the partnerships. We're going to do that. They should do that. They own so many companies, they should just take care of that. Frankly, I think PlayStation should do the same. You know, they should say the PlayStation 6 is going to be our last disc machine. And if you have any PlayStation games from any period in our history, PlayStation 3, whatever, you have those things on disc, stick them in. They're going to work. I think it would be great. And I think it would really say to the consumer base that, oh my God, they love this thing. But then also think about how do you reach more people? How do you make this more accessible? You know, and PlayStation's going to have a handheld that's going to directly compete with the Switch and the other PC handhelds out there.
And Microsoft already has handhelds.
Yes,
the
exactly.
Rogue Allies.
Yeah, exactly. So, like we're moving in that direction, and we've got crossplay with most of these multiplayer experiences out there, and we have multiple systems being launched, like you know, Marathon's on PC and PlayStation right now already. Like, eventually, we're going to have these. It's not necessarily going to be about the hardware. It's going to be about the subscription or the membership that you're making and the benefits that come with that. It's going to be less about the hardware. I think it's going to be more about, you know, the ecosystem that you want to play. And honestly, like all of the legislation that we see out of Europe to open up the shops and stuff like that, really for the phones, really speak to that. You know, they don't want to close it all down. They want to make it open and lots of open source and make all the cables the same. You know, we're drowning in all of the
The charging
efforts
cable.
from proprietary crap. Like we are drowning in that. All of us
I
have a
know.
drawer that we can open and go, well, this doesn't plug into anything. Like I don't have the adapter for this thing. This doesn't work. I don't know, like we seriously, as the human race has got to move beyond that, and
Thank God
eventually,
everybody's moving on to the USB-C. Like I am
yeah,
so in favor of USB-C. I think that's a wonderful cable. I hope we keep that for everything for as long as possible until
I
something
know.
better comes along, and then they all agree that we're going
Don't
to
you
go with
hate
the next.
HDMI though? Don't you freaking hate HDMI and the
I do.
handshake BS? And like you have to turn on your receiver and your TV, and sometimes they don't talk to each other, and it's like, and then your conscious like, just work, like they were. Yeah, no, we have we've got this like mountains of proprietary stuff that we have built as the human. It's like Wall-E, all of these gadgets that are useless because we've lost the cable for them. It's nuts.
Well, Victor, we have one more news story to talk about, and it's unfortunately a bit of a downer. Before we, to be clear, we are going to transition after this downer story to the joyful experience that is Super Mario Brothers Wonder. But
yes.
First, Epic Games, the makers of Fortnite, the owners of Rocket League, and the developer behind the most widely used video game creation engine on the planet, the Unreal Engine, has laid off more than 1,000 people. And the company will also be cutting job listings, canceling contractors, which means additional people will likely be losing their livelihoods. And then the Epic Games CEO, Tim Sweeney, wrote an open letter blaming, quote, slower growth, weaker spending, tougher cost economics, current consoles selling less than last generations, and games competing against increasingly engaging forms of entertainment. Right. And then Sweeney also said that the team has failed to consistently deliver the, quote, Fortnite magic with every season. And then he goes on to ensure us that these layoffs are not related to AI, which I mean, I guess that's the silver lining there. But I really want to emphasize this. Like 1,000 people are without work now, more than 1,000 people. That is larger than the total size of many AAA studios. That is the equivalent of a major studio just being shut down entirely. And this is the studio behind Fortnite.
I know, it's insane. So really proving out how precarious the live service race is. But Fortnite's already made so much money that maybe there is this, discussion to be had about when to call it quits. When's enough? This opens so many topics of discussion. First of all, the cost of making games is insane, and the industry needs to figure a way back to some kind of healthy number. People shouldn't be chasing 2,000 people working on a game. They shouldn't be chasing that. They should be chasing 100 people working on a game that will sell, people will play all the way through, and then they'll buy another game. That's when our industry, I think, was the healthiest, when we were on a full-on, across-the-board upswing. Now, there's been some huge, huge wins in live service. Fortnite is one of them. All the EA Sports, games where people are buying all of these cards and stuff, Marvel Rivals. Sure, there have been these huge things. All the free-to-play mobile stuff that has hit, Genshin Impact and all that. I totally understand it. And companies have FOMO, and businesses are there to make money, and they look around and they go, well, these guys have all of this money. But it isn't a happy story a big chunk of the time. There's a lot of work that people put into these things, and people never see. I think that it can become really hard work for people that are just sort of iterating on little assets and stuff like that for people to purchase. I don't think that's especially, gratifying, artistically joyful work for people that can build more, and they can. And I also think that, as we've been talking about, these live service games suck the oxygen out of the industry. They really keep people trapped inside of these forever worlds, when I think the better call is to make smaller games with smaller teams that cost less for the consumer to jump into, and they feel satisfied and they feel compelled to continue their journey into video games, and they're being marketed their next adventure and their next experience. That's how it was built, and I really feel since Fortnite and World of Warcraft and EverQuest, some other huge titles, and kudos to everybody involved in these games that were world changing. But until then, the industry was just built brick by brick on the idea, like, we build a product, we ship a product, we get rewards from that product, and we get to continue. And it did. It was healthier, and it wasn't so life or death. And now it feels like everybody is trying to hit a grand slam or they're out of business.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't hit that grand slam, they're out of business. Like High Guard and Marathon, there's a lot of discussion
Concord.
about how much that cost, like it all just seems so precarious and dangerous, and it becomes the big story about the health of the whole industry, and it isn't the health of the whole industry. Fortnite is an industry. Fortnite is its own damn business,
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at Epic, and I know Tim, I've interviewed him tons of times and we've connected over the years. He really genuinely cares about his people, his company, the stuff that he's grown. I think what's happened though too is like his worldview is like he's breathing billionaire air, like he's in a totally different stratosphere. And I think it's almost like, and I've seen this happen a lot with executives, they become like we play The Sims, they play Sim Company, and and they have control of a whole, thousands of people's livelihoods. But think about, instead of, letting all those people go, but like finding a different path and pivoting and siloing out each of those, that 1,000 people into 10 groups of 100, and to think about what they could have built and where they could have gone with this. And Epic has a history in narrative-based work and single-player
Mm-hmm.
stuff, Gears of War. Like, they could have done a lot of interesting things with that amount of resource. And that's the heartbreak,
Yeah.
But it also signifies that now it's time for major sweeping change across the industry if Fortnite can't do it. The other thing that I just thought about is, like, we live in a connected age, but there are great little communities all over North America, in Canada and the US. And now I think is a perfect time for some smaller towns, some sort of mid-sized towns, to get really aggressive, to really understand the talent pool that's out there, and to help companies emerge in different sectors. Because what we're seeing is Seattle and Los Angeles and Vancouver and
San Francisco,
and New York and Toronto and Montreal, they're not cheap. And that's where all these huge AAA games are running into huge AAA problems, and and I know the reason why we bang the drum on AAA is because that's the needle mover. That's the stuff that gets people's attention. That's the stuff that we can put in front of anyone and say, this is what video games are. But we can still make those games with a lot less people. Marvel could be funding, maybe it's not Spider-Man, but maybe it's, a Daredevil game with 100 people. And it's made out of Minneapolis, and it's a totally different vibe and a different scale. And it's not maybe Insomniac kind of level of, because they got to have 1,000 people working on that franchise and on Wolverine right now. But people will still have a lot of joy and a lot of fun, and it will still be successful at a different scale. And I think the industry is missing a little bit of that. You can call it AA in the face of the Naughty Dog, Insomniac, photoreal kind of reach that's out there. But I just think, like, we just need some great games that are made by really talented people, that have an ending, for Christ's sakes. I hate to swear, but like, we just need to finish a game, feel satisfied about it, want to replay it because it was so good, and then be excited about the next thing we're going to play. And I just feel like this business has done so much to lock us into things forever. And like, I don't want that, and I can't be alone.
I have 2 points that kind of play off of some of the stuff that you've talked about here. You covered a lot of topics there. In addition to them, having the most played game of the last decade, Fortnite,
Yeah,
and the most widely used game engine in Unreal, this is also a company that received a $1.5 billion investment from Disney just 2 years ago.
right.
And on
And they're
top of
working on
that,
some big metaverse thing in Disney. Yeah,
yeah. So on top of that, this Epic Games is a company that has been the target of so many studios that have just sent themselves into the pit of closure because they so badly wanted to be the next Fortnite.
yeah.
And now this comes out, and it seems not even the people who make Fortnite can be the
No,
next Fortnite because they can't
no.
even make this business model work in a sustainable way. So it
Yeah,
starts to feel like, what are we even doing here? Because Epic also laid off 830 people back in 2023. And it's
yeah,
like, if Epic Games can't be a place of stability after all this cash injection from people licensing Unreal or spending V-Bucks in Fortnite or
yeah.
getting this giant investment from Disney. $1.5 billion is more money than any of us will see in our lifetimes.
Totally.
And like, what can be a place of stability? I guess it's like the small indie studios that aren't having all of these insane expenses. And I don't know. I think that that we are going down a very dangerous path in
Yeah,
this industry because we are inevitably, with how unstable everything has been, we're going to see this mass exodus of established talent because they need a
absolutely.
job, and the games
Yeah,
industry is not giving them the stability that they need. And like, when you're in your early 20s and you lose a job, you go, oh, okay, I'll get another one. When you're 55 years old and you
yeah.
lose a job, you start to think like, maybe I need to look elsewhere because I don't feel like going through like,
With all
starting
that
at another
experience
company.
and know-how and
Yeah.
ability to ship. Well, and that's you bring up an excellent point, and I think the industry, and who was it? I think it was one of the heads, Rob Pardo. I think at GDC had a talk, and it was behind closed doors about the game teams. That's what's valuable. It's not the game; it's the game team.
Mhm.
And if a game team can work together and finish a project in the case of Fortnite, or ship a product in the case of a real game, no shade at Fortnite. Fortnite's it's an industry, it's a platform, and it's remarkable the stuff that they did with Lego and the stuff that they did with Rock Band and incorporating all the music stuff and Rocket League. Incredible. I went to a launch event that they had in New York, and I was like, holy crap, this is insane. This is like, I mean, they're obviously targeting the Roblox valuation. Roblox just pisses me off. I just can't believe it because Roblox is all just about. I like that it's a community place for young people to get in and enjoy games, but they're playing ripped off ideas from better
Mhm.
games that have terrible art. But I like that kids get their hands on some design and understanding some of that stuff. But I watched my daughter play it, and I was like, "What the hell?" And they would play all kinds of copyrighted music and copywritten design ideas. And all. It just drove me nuts. But Fortnite clearly looked at, because I think Roblox is worth like $50 billion or something like that, and they said we want that in Fortnite. I get it, but again, it's like that comes with the idea that people won't have any time to play anything else, and I think that credo, that philosophy, has been so destructive in the business. It's really splintered us as a fan base. We used to circle around things as they came out, and we talked about them. We go to stores, like it's all part and parcel. Like we used to really celebrate this stuff together, and now everybody's in a silo, and it's like console wars on speed, and like we're fighting because we don't have the console wars. It's just
Mhm.
so ridiculous, and it's so toxic, and I feel like the industry needs to kind of look at how this stuff was built and get back to it a little bit and simplify the whole process and make it more approachable and more accessible for a lot of the outsiders who must just see all the doom and gloom around games and think, it's dying, it's dead, or the toxicity, and say, I'm not jumping in there, I'm not getting online with those people, I'm not, uh, it's kind of tragic.
Mhm.
It is the most beautiful artistic medium, you and I know this, that humans have made. um, but it is being besieged by some woeful decisions that are really compromising the value of it all. And one of them is this whole notion that free to play games are video games. It infuriates me. It infuriates me that people will put a Candy Crush next to an Eco and say they're the same thing.
Mm. Well, we'll be talking about a free-to-play game in a couple weeks here with Pokemon Champions, which got an April 8th release date, which we did not cover on this episode, but that is something that we will discuss on this podcast. But yeah, I understand what you're saying for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no real great way to segue out of that. So, Victor, we're going to take our only break of this episode. And when we return, we will be giving our review for Super Mario Bros. Wonder's new expansion, plus a few other new games on Switch 2. We will be right back. We are back, and Victor, we were just talking about this last segment, but one of the coolest perks of what we get to do is we get to play a whole lot of video games. And
yes,
that has never been more evident than this week, as we have all been playing a ton of new releases that really span a wide range of genres. We're just going to be talking about the ones that are coming to Switch. So this is not even everything else that we're playing right now. You mentioned Crimson Desert. I've been playing a couple of other games, but it's been a very busy time. But the first and most obvious one that we will be talking about is, I guess you could call it anticipated, and I'll explain what I mean by that here in a second.
Yeah.
But the expansion to Super Mario Bros. Wonder Meetup at Bellabel Park. And the reason that I said I guess anticipated was because I feel like the marketing of this game really let what this is down. Because I looked at this, and based on all the marketing that they gave us, I was like, oh, they're adding Mario Party minigames to Mario Wonder. I don't really care about that. You and I played them together. We joined a play session and played through a lot of these minigames together. But that was maybe no offense to you, you were great company, but maybe my least favorite part of this package. I think that there was so much more to this that they didn't really even market until way late in this promotional cycle that ended up being by far my favorite stuff. Some of my favorite stuff in the Mario Wonder package in general.
Well, first of all, it's an incredible game. It's it's probably top 3 2D games that I've played in my life. I just absolutely love it. I feel, we talked about this with the Mario movies, but it's so joyous, and the first time the flowers speaks to you, and then the first time that the flowers sing in chorus and stuff, I was just mind blowing. I love this freaking game. And I did enjoy those mini games, but I think the challenge is going to be to collect the people to play those mini games on a regular basis. And Nintendo thankfully did do that for us. So we got to taste a lot of it. And I played some of the co-op and competitive stuff with my daughter because there's the local multiplayer stuff, and then there's the online multiplayer stuff. But you're right, there's some single player component material in there. Which is really fun, like fighting the Koopalings and all that. But I'm curious, what is your favorite part of this new edition here?
So the story element of it is you go to Bellabel Park and the Koopalings swarm in and steal the Bellabel flowers. There are 7 of them, which is convenient because there's 7 Koopalings. Yeah. And you have to go to the different worlds of Super Mario Bros. Wonder and challenge them to a boss course, not just a boss battle, a boss course. Yeah. And I mean, the best part of Super Mario Brothers Wonder, outside of the core Mario functionality, it feels really good to run and jump and get power-ups, and the art is great, but that's true of a lot of Mario games. The thing about Mario Wonder is the wonder effects, right? And just the ways that they warp the stage, warp the experience of playing through a level.
Big time.
And they really capitalize on that with the Koopaling boss courses. So it's not just okay, you get to the end of a normal stage and you fight a Koopaling who has a wonder effect, like a wonder flower that they're using to their advantage. It's that, but it extends across the entire stage. And it's so compelling to see okay, Wendy is a fish. So she is going to swim at you. She's going to throw other fish like cheeps at you. And just really alter the way you play the stage. And then another character, he transforms into a ghost, and I'm going to try to not spoil a lot of stuff, but like he starts attacking in a certain way that like really impacts the way the level plays, and it's like extra considerations on top of just platforming through the levels. And
Yeah.
when you get to the boss battle at the end of these stages, I think they are some of the best boss battles that the 2D Mario franchise at least has ever done. I think
Yep.
that they are better than a lot of the base
The
game
base
boss
stuff. Yep.
fights.
Yeah.
They're definitely better than the final boss, which I thought was a big disappointment in Mario Wonder. I thought the final boss battle in Mario Wonder was pretty underwhelming. All
Yeah.
of these, I think, are better than that. And they do such a great job of expanding on what a Wonder effect can do.
They
Because, like,
weren't particularly difficult, though. I did find
no,
that, like, beating all 7 of them wasn't it didn't it I found that kind of interesting that they weren't, like, really, like, you have to challenge you and then go back at them, but they are unbelievably, undeniably enjoyable. They're so
mhm.
fun and they're so clever. And I totally get that. And did you also enjoy the training camp? I forget what they
Yeah,
called it,
Toad
where
Brigade training camp. So the thing that was my second favorite part, because
I love that, yeah.
there are two major complaints against Super Mario Brothers Wonder that I think are very valid. One is the like just lack of multiplayer functionality. I mean, there was multiplayer in the base game, but it just wasn't as fleshed out as I think it should have been in a 2023 release. And that rectifies it here with the Attraction Central, which is all like the multiplayer mini games and everything. But the other very valid complaint, I think, is in the difficulty of Super Mario Brothers Wonder. Like the
Right.
Koopalings, like you said, they're engaging, they're fun, not particularly challenging. There's a couple that I didn't die, but I tripped up and I was like, oh man, this is getting kind of tense. But I didn't
Yeah.
end up. I don't think I had to replay any of them to beat them.
No.
I think I beat all of them on the first try. I can't say the same about Toad Brigade Training Camp, because
No.
some of those, I mean, this is where they really address the difficulty. Some of
Yeah.
those, I was like, am I going to be able to beat this? It was the same feeling I had in those final, like, if you 100%ed Mario Wonder when it came out, the
Which I
badge
still haven't,
marathons.
because some of them are super tough. There are some really challenging
Yeah.
levels, which is part of what makes the game so incredible.
hmm So I was disappointed that the base game waited until those post game levels to really ramp up the difficulty. If
Yeah.
you wanted more challenging stuff from this game, Toad Brigade Training Camp is where you need to go. And it's a shame that it's named that,
Yeah.
because it sounds like a
You're gonna
tutorial.
miss it. Yeah, you're gonna
It
miss it. I that was like the last thing that I checked out. I'm like, this is really, really fun. Really, what it is, it's a taste of some of the mechanics that you get in the mini games. That's why it's called the training camp. And the mini games in multiplayer were really fun. But I know that the challenge is going to trying to collect, because everybody is busy and saturated with a million things. Everybody's on their own siloed, screen doing whatever they want to do right now. And so you got to pull them away from that and join you in your Mario Wonder experience. But if you do, the multiplayer stuff is really fun. My favorite thing is what you do with the Bella water, because you
oh yeah.
earn the water to flesh out your camp. You can decorate everything with the flowers and stuff. And I didn't even think about this. Like, I didn't even think this was coming. It was a nice surprise. But you can get instrument flowers, and the instrument flowers turn the Poplin band into a bigger band. They just start adding instruments to it. It's not even gameplay. It's just an experiential element in the thing. But as these little Poplins start parading around with their instruments and they're playing the music, which is great, the new instruments you add change the timbre and the sound of the music, and it's just so smart and so lovely. I was so charmed by it, man. I just thought that was an incredible addition.
It's shades of that, a larger version of that small mission in New Donk City in Mario Odyssey, where you're going around collecting the different instrumentalists, and you go into that concert hall and it's just like the bassist, and you just hear like the bass line of the Mario overworld theme, and then you get
Yeah,
the trumpeter, and then you get a dun dun
love
dun,
that. Yeah, that
and
was
then the
great.
guitarist, and like that was great, and it feels like that. You're right.
Yep.
But to talk about Toad Brigade Training Camp, just to give people a rundown of what this is, it's like kind of like siloed different
Challenges.
challenge like courses, basically, where it's
Yep.
like this
Yep.
one, it's like, here's a bunch of stages where you have to collect all the coins before the timer expires. Here's a
Yep.
bunch of stages where you defeat all the enemies before the timer expires. Here's one where you just have to get to the end.
Sometimes in waves as well. Like you have to get past the thing and the timer is still counting down. You get to the next stage, you got to still get all the enemies, and they're different, and the mechanics are slightly different for each of the enemies. Brilliant. It's really condensed, gameplay moments.
And the gameplay mechanics are often different as well. Sometimes sometimes you can choose whatever loadout you want. Other times they're like, no, you have to use this loadout. And like there was one where it was like you had to avoid coins, and you had not only the invisibility, there are new dual badges that you can get where it's 2 of the badges that you can equip combined into one. And some of them are like, all right, well, you get the spin jump, and then you can transition straight from like the spin boost jump straight to like the parachute cap that like lets you really be precise about where you want to land and like be careful. Then there are others that it's just like, this is designed to make it more difficult. And the one
I want to see those badges in a 3D Mario. I want to see some of that stuff go to a 3D Mario. You're right, though. Training camp is not a great name for that section. And I'm thinking that you're probably like, they could have changed the marketing to kind of focus on the more of the single player elements of the game, and then pivoted to, but we've also added all this cool multiplayer stuff. But they led with the multiplayer stuff, and it's great, but it's not realistic, I think, for most people than how they're going to experience Mario Wonder. It just isn't. Yeah.
And then like you said, like in the Toad Brigade training camp, like they also, sometimes it's just like you're on a bouncy ball. You got to get through this level as you're bouncing on this ball. You have no attacks or anything. You just got to get to the end, and there's like bumpers pushing you all around, and you have a time limit. So you got to get up there and figure out like the best path. Another one, you're in like a plane, kind of like in like Super Mario Land, where you're flying around, and you got to hit like
Flappy Bird.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But like there's one that is the bane of my existence, this dual badge that is my 2 least favorite badges in one. And that is the spring feet, where you're just constantly on a pogo stick, basically, and invisibility. And there are some badges where, or some Toad Brigade training courses where you have to go through a level with that. And I despise it, but and that's why they do it, because they want it to be challenging, and mission accomplished, because it took me about 20 minutes to get through that course. And like, there are some of them like that, where it's like, you can tell they said, all right, well, we're going to make this one a really tough one to get through. And there are so many really interesting ways that they experiment with level design in Super Mario Brothers Wonder through the Toad Brigade training camp, but also through the Koopaling encounters, because all of them have distinct power sets, and then you have to adjust how you're going through a level based on that. My favorite thing from the Toad Brigade training camp are the missions where you have to remain invincible. So it starts off, it gives you a star, and then you have to find another star point to renew your invincibility before you run out. And if you run out, you're dead. And you got to keep going. And, you start speed running through a level, and then you see a star point. You're like, all right, I got to go there. And what it does is it moves. So it starts like juking you, basically, and goes up into into an area where you have to wall jump back and forth to get to the top. It starts becoming not only a speed run thing, but also a think on your feet thing, which I think is a really fun combination. Of course, it's the same every time you go into it. So like eventually you do learn the patterns of the star points.
There's a little bit of a memorization thing.
But it's just so engaging and so much fun. And I feel like it was a thing that this game was missing. And I loved the base game. Like I gave it a 9.25 when it came out. And I called it the most creative Mario game in 30 years, or most creative 2D Mario game in 30 years. I think since maybe Yoshi's Island or Super Mario World, there hasn't been a game in the 2D Mario lineage that is as creative as Super Mario Brothers Wonder.
Yoshi's Island is a great call out. Yeah, all the morphing abilities of Yoshi. Yeah. I loved it too. I think I gave it a 9.5. I think it's absolutely incredible, and I think that this new edition makes the whole game like hovering right at a 10. But of course, it's built. You have to factor in that it's based on an older game, which diminishes the surprise a little bit. And it's got an emphasis on the multiplayer stuff, which is not going to be for everybody. But it is an incredible game. Who it is for people that didn't get it on the Switch 1. It's absolutely a pickup for your Switch 2.
If you didn't have it on Switch 1, this is the biggest no-brainer on the entire Switch 2, I think.
Yeah.
But even if you had it on Switch 1, like I 100%ed it on Switch
Yeah.
1 before it even came out. I got the 100%. The Switch 2 version, the 4K at 60 frames per second is great, but like
It looked
that's
great before.
negligible compared
Yeah.
to the new difficulty stuff, the new Koopaling stuff, the fun little discovery that you get in the Bellabel Park overworld map, and of course
And
the
it's
multiplayer
also been
stuff.
long enough that you could just start from scratch if you've played it before and just re-experience all of it. Sure, you're going to fly through a lot of the levels, but it's also beautiful. And weren't you also thinking of Mario Maker and how you can kind of have this language with the level designers as you're playing through these games and how smart they are and how much they riff and how much that will translate to an inevitable future edition of Mario Maker? Like
I hope
it's
so.
really, really well defined. I'm sure they're going to have some wonder stuff in a new Mario Maker down the road.
Oh, that would be
It's not
so
the
much
last
fun.
we're ever going to see of that elephant character or the new
Oh
flower
no.
character.
Oh,
Yeah.
the talking flower's still everywhere. He's the referee or the commentator in Mario Tennis, and he
Oh, I
has his
love
own little
that.
statue. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's still everywhere. Like they've carried him
Wasn't
forward.
Fever terrific as well? I think that's a
Fever
bit of
was
an
very fun.
underappreciated 2026 game. I loved Mario Tennis Fever.
That was
So
a lot
damn
of
good.
fun. Yeah, I
Yeah.
really liked that a lot. But yeah, I mean, Super Mario Brothers Wonder, it's such a terrible name. Super Mario Brothers Wonder,
That's
Nintendo
part of the
Switch
problem.
2 edition, plus
Yes.
Meetup in Bellabel Park.
Yes.
It's an abysmal title. Like they need to get rid of the Nintendo Switch 2 edition stuff and like figure out
Yes.
a better naming convention. Like I know you can't just call it like New Super Mario Brothers Wonder because that new nomenclature is kind of tainted at this point. But like
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it's really unwieldy to have to be like, yeah, I bought Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Super Mario Brothers Wonder, and or like if your friend's like, oh yeah, I bought Mario Wonder. Which edition should I get? Like, oh
Yeah.
God. Let me get a deep breath before I tell you this. Super Mario Brothers Wonder Nintendo Switch 2 edition plus Meetup in Bellabel Park. Oh my God. Okay, let me breathe again. It's frustrating that like that's a small complaint in the grand scheme of things. That this is a still an extremely joyful game.
Yeah.
It is a great game to turn on and just forget about whatever worries you have going on in the real world. And it was a blast to play in 2023, and it's even better in 2026.
Hell yeah. And then if you pair that up with Super Mario Galaxy 1 and Super Mario Galaxy 2 on Nintendo Switch 2 after you see Super Mario Galaxy in the theaters next week, you're going to be very, very happy. You're going to be playing all kinds of goodness.
I mean, I do want to talk. Once this movie is out, I am going to talk
Yeah.
more about that character that we alluded to before and
Yeah.
the implications of what that means for that character going forward in video games. But
Big time.
don't want to dwell too much on that. But anything else we want to talk about in the Mario Wonder 2 Bellabel Park expansion?
I just, I encourage people that do buy the multiplayer stuff to try to drag their friends and family to sit with them and to play some of that stuff in multiplayer because it is really fun,
It does have game share.
And it does have game share, yeah. So, get some people together and check this thing out.
Yeah, and I know I downplayed the multiplayer stuff, but I had a really good time with that as well. But to Victor's point, it was it can be a challenge to get people together as adults anyway to
Yeah.
to play the same game.
Or kids,
and all
man.
that.
Like
Yeah.
I asked my daughter to play, and it was a little bit of like, come on, sit down with me and play. And we did have a good time. But she's 14, so she has a lot of her own stuff that she syncs with, and that's what she loves. She's still loving Animal Crossing, and she's playing Pokepia right now, and she's loving that too. So sometimes it's hard to like, come on, let's play with Dad. Let's go. It used to be a lot easier, is what I'm telling you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we used to have, how many channels on the TV, and now they have unlimited entertainment on their
Totally.
phone at any given moment. So
Yeah.
I understand. I mean, hey, Tim Sweeney even called it out in his Epic Games letter, talking about increasingly engaging forms of entertainment they have to compete with as game developers. So I get that.
Yep.
But Super Mario Brothers Wonder, Nintendo Switch 2, plus Meetup in Bellabel Park is available now on Switch 2, and I gave it a 9.25 out of 10 over on GameInformer.com. If you want to read my full review, you can go over to that website. But yeah, basically it feels like, a natural extension in a lot of ways to the original Super Mario Brothers Wonder package.
Big time. I gave it a 9 on EP, on Reviews on the Run.
Well, you can go to Electric Playground, the YouTube channel, and check that out, and you'll see Victor's full review as well. So go
Yep.
check out both of those if you want to hear more about that package. We have another game to talk about. The last three games we're going to talk about are a little bit breezier than Super Mario Brothers Wonder, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition plus Meetup in Bellabel Park. And the names are also a lot breezier to say. And that is, the first one is Marvel MaXimum Collection. There, I can easily
Yeah.
say that in one breath. And
Yeah.
this is a thing that kind of came out of nowhere a few weeks
Yes.
ago.
Yes.
And it's a collection of 6.
And it's here.
Yeah, I know, and it's crazy because like it just
Yeah.
felt like it crept up on us. And it's 6 games from Konami's past with the Marvel license, and
Well, it's Konami and Data East, and
Data East,
they're
yeah.
and Acclaim Games, which are now owned by a company called Throwback, and they've been parsing out some of those old classic games in different ways, like Turok and other things. But they went back, limited run, went back and worked with all of the stakeholders and with Marvel Games to be able to collect them all in one collection, which sounds impossible to me, but they did
It
it.
does. Well, I think Konami is working with them because there is a big Konami screen that pops up when it
Yes.
starts.
Yep.
But the centerpiece of this is the X-Men arcade game back from
Right.
like 92, I think it was when this came out.
Yeah. I don't have the dates in front of me, but I'll trust you.
But
Yeah.
and then there's Captain America and the Avengers. There's the arcade, Mega Drive, and arcade and Mega Drive, I guess, are the only versions of that.
Yep.
Spider-Man, Venom, Maximum
Actually,
Carnage.
there's an NES version of Captain America and the Avengers, which was pretty cool and very different from the arcade experience, which I appreciate. I think they put the Super Nintendo version of. So overall, there's 13 different variations of these 6 different games, and some of the 8-bit versions of the games turn out quite differently than the sort of core mothership versions, the sort of higher profile ones. But it's a pretty cool trip through Marvel history and video gaming history.
Yeah. So the one I was really looking forward to was Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage. And
Yep.
that's because I never played it when I was a kid.
Oh,
I
wow.
always saw the ads because that red sky over New York with Carnage like reaching out towards you was so iconic back in the 90s.
Big time.
Like that was
And the red cartridge for Super Nintendo.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I had that.
Yeah. Yep.
But then I didn't even know that there was a sequel to that game, which is Venom and Spider-Man Separation Anxiety, with Venom getting top billing there, which is a fascinating thing. That they also have the Super Nintendo and Mega Drive version as well.
Yep.
And then there's Spider-Man and X-Men Arcade's Revenge.
Yep.
And I think
Super Nintendo, Genesis, or Mega Drive, Game Gear, and Game Boy versions of that. And it's fun to it's fun to look at all the different versions. It's pretty cool. My favorite, I think, is the Genesis one, and then Silver Surfer right on NES.
Yeah, so lots of games to pick through here. I already talked about Maximum Carnage being the one I was most looking forward to in terms of like getting into a new game and seeing like, oh, did this live up to the hype that I had, that I built up for it back when I was reading like magazines in the 90s and seeing that ad. But the game I was most excited to play actually, and excited to have a home version of, was X-Men Arcade. Like,
yeah,
one of the most beloved arcade games of the 1990s. It's still a game that I will go to the arcade and put several dollars worth of money into, or tokens into.
So replayable.
It is. And I sat down.
These games all speak to that. You know, all these conversations we've had in this episode about the longevity of games and how long they are. And I mean, this is a perfect artifact to be able to go back and to witness a simpler age, but to play games that are eternal. Like they're just fun forever to jump in, and not all of them to the same degree. I mean, there's certainly some quality variance in here, but man, these games hit, you know, and it's because we care about the characters. But I can also feel that, and I said this in my review, is you can feel that from the developers. Like they knew their responsibility, and they contributed, you know, they really came with some cool ideas, and it was really fun. And I'll tell you the one that I'd played X-Men in the arcade, and I've dabbled with it over the years a little bit, but you know, not in a great length like we're able to do through this collection. But the other one was Captain America and the Avengers, which has dinky sprites. Like all the characters look pretty small because it's meant to have 4 different players up there at the same time. X-Men, you can do that as well with much bigger sprites. So the art is a lot flashier with X-Men.
Mhm.
But with Captain America, they're smaller and the animations aren't quite as elaborate, but there's a lot of variety. And I honestly came away having the most fun playing the arcade version of Captain America and the Avengers, because
Mm.
there's cameos like crazy in the thing. Wonder Man's in there, and um, the Wasp, and then we get Submariner pops in for a bit, and Captain America is always thanking everybody. And there's some grammatically incorrect stuff on in the text and stuff, but it's so fun. And the other thing that I really appreciate about it, actually thought the animations were pretty cool, but there's a nice variety. Like sometimes they'd be in like a space shooter thing, because Data East made lots of space shooters. So Captain America will put on a space helmet or an underwater helmet and then be blasting away with his shield at all kinds of enemies. But I found it so, I, I don't know, just really tactile and really enjoyable to play. And you're not penalized for using your um, projectile powers. Like in the
Oh,
case of
thank
Cap, you're
God.
throwing the
Yeah.
shield. But in X-Men, you are. If you want to
Mhm.
use your mutant abilities, your life goes down. And so that becomes challenging unless you start throwing in virtual quarters and you just stack up on lives.
Oh, I did that
Um,
last night when I played through the X-Men arcade game. I'm like, I'm gonna not just like completely take away the coolest part of these characters. Like, I'm just gonna
yeah.
use Colossus's giant screen clearing ability, and like,
Yes.
I don't care. I'm not putting actual coins into a machine. I'm just hitting the. I was playing on PS5. I'm just hitting the touchpad on the PS5 controller, and that's like going Colossus, 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 and it's just like adding
That's great.
two lives every single time. And all on the also something that we haven't mentioned yet is that in the console games there's also a cheats menu that you can open up and give
Yep.
yourself either infinite health or infinite lives in most of the games, and you basically have infinite lives in the X-Men arcade game because you can just put in more quarters. The thing that the only thing that was like kind of a downer for me on the X-Men arcade was that you have to select a character at the beginning. So like if you start playing as Cyclops and you're like, oh, I'd kind of like to play these next couple levels as Nightcrawler, you can't do that because
No,
the
you
way that,
can.
oh, you
You
can.
can. Yeah, you can when you press the start button again. When you're about to go again, you can go left or right on the controller, and you can choose in the little
Oh,
picture window. But it's a little bit cumbersome, and you couldn't do that with Captain America or with Captain America and the Avengers, which I thought was a bit of a drag. It's almost like you have to choose the place on the arcade board where your
mhm.
character is, because it's itemized like that a little bit. So hopefully, limited run will patch that a little bit so people can choose their different characters and stuff. Yeah, there are quirks for sure, and there are quirks in the, like if you play the Game Boy version of Spider-Man and X-Men Arcade's Revenge, it's pretty choppy and slow, but there's some really interesting background work. And I feel like the Game Gear version of that game was maybe too fast and also clumsy. That game in general has pretty clunky controls, but it's cool that they combined all those characters and gave each character some different levels and challenges. I think Silver Surfer is actually a pretty remarkable piece of software. I didn't know that Graham Devine worked on that game, and he's kind of
Oh,
a legend in the video game industry. I worked at Looking Glass, I believe, worked on Thief. Like that guy has had a nice long career working on all kinds of cool stuff, but he is one of the main directors on the game when I checked out the credits in the title. And it's a really tight shooter. It's a space shooter, and really tough to navigate through all the different precarious things. And you can't always tell exactly where you can go
it's
because of
notoriously
the way the
difficult.
art is. Yeah, it's very difficult, but they've, with the rewind, and you have turbo fire on it as
Mhm.
well. You can actually progress into the game, and the music is incredible. The art doesn't flicker, and there's all of
Mm.
this stuff happening on screen at the same time. Like for NES code, I think it's a pretty remarkable experience. I really like that.
Mm. I mean, this was a collection that had circled on the calendar as soon as I learned about when it was coming out, and thankfully,
Yep.
we learned a couple weeks ago, and it was coming out this week, so it wasn't like we had a ton of time to wait. So that was nice. But yeah, like I'm really enjoying it. I don't know how much time I'll pour into most of these games, but like I will say that when held up against something like a Digital Eclipse collection it does
Yep.
look a little anemic outside of like the games themselves. Like, Digital Eclipse pulls out all the stops, but like doing like a full documentary on.
That's the way these things should be made. Absolutely. Yeah.
So the museum that
Yep.
is included with Marvel Maximum Collection left a little bit to be desired. It was like, okay, here's some ads from magazines, here's the boxes, and then I saw design docs. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And I go in, it was only for one game, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's upsetting.
Yeah.
I wish they had
I
more.
know. I know. And honestly, I think for video game diehards like yourself and me, that's some of the stuff that and I actually interviewed the limited run guys, and I talked about that. I really feel like the video interviews are so important, and they should aspire to make little mini docs, and who knows, maybe they will grow into that. But I also think that this is kind of an impossible thing that I was begging these companies to do. I
Mhm.
started a whole segment, a whole playlist on my YouTube channel called Side Scrolling Superheroes, because I fell in love with the Marvel Spider-Man game for PS5 or PS4 when it came out in 2018. And I went, and I have a whole bunch of these games sitting on my shelf. And I went, I played them, but what I'm finding as I continue on in my business, my career of covering games, is that we moved on so quickly from the 2D stuff, and there were so many cool ideas there. And so I wanted to go back, and I, looked at Maximum Carnage, which is incredible, by the way. It's so fun and so goofy. And what I love is all this pixel art that tells the story like comic
Yeah.
books with little, word bubbles and all that stuff. I love all that stuff. So I've been digging the side-scrolling superhero stuff for a while, and I was begging Marvel to put a collection exactly like this together. There's a bunch of other 2D Marvel games that they should do,
Mhm.
and DC should do one as well. But I'm so happy that this is happening, And you could easily emulate these things or find them in a bunch of different ways, or go and find classic machines and classic cartridges. But it's pretty damn cool that all of these are collected for, and multiple versions of these games collected for modern players on every machine out there. I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, if you are listening to this, the game is out right now. So if you want to go check it out, it's out on Switch 2 and every other major platform. I'm having a blast. Again, I played it on PS5, so I can't talk specifically about how it runs on Switch or Switch 2, but it's out there. So
Yep.
go check that out. And we have two more games to talk about, not in as much depth because they're both sports games. I know as soon as I talk about sports games, people are like, all right, I'm done with this episode. So, real
I love
quick,
sports games.
I do too. And
Yep.
I have fallen into becoming the sports game guy at Game Informer because all the other sports guys left. So
Yeah.
it's just me
Yeah.
now. So I reviewed MLB The Show 26. If you're watching the video version, you can see I am wearing the Baltimore Orioles jersey because it is opening day as we are recording this episode in the Major League Baseball. And,
You're not a Twins fan?
they're like my second favorite team. Like my rule
Okay.
for when I move to a city that is not like the city that hosts my sports teams is I will root for that city's team as long as they are not, one, a rival to my team, or
Yeah.
two, playing my team. It just
Right.
so happens that the Twins and the Orioles open the season against each other. So I am wearing this
You're conflicted.
around the Twin Cities as an enemy of the state, basically.
Yeah.
Wearing an Orioles jersey today to celebrate opening day.
Yeah.
I didn't get to do that when I lived in Pittsburgh because I'm a Ravens fan, and the Steelers are not going to be a team I root for anytime in the foreseeable future. But
Awesome.
I mean, if I ever lived in New York, you'd not find me rooting for the Yankees. I'll tell you that much. But I'll root for the Twins because they're not like a direct threat to the Orioles because they're not division rivals and they only play them a couple times a year or a couple series a year.
I'll tell you this, Brian, the whole world is rooting for Minneapolis in every form.
I hope so. It's nice to be known as something other than, oh, it's really cold there, and isn't that a flyover state?
Yeah.
So it's nice to have some worldwide recognition now. But MLB The Show 26. I full disclosure, I played this primarily on PS5, but I did fire up and play through a couple of games on the Switch 2.
Mm.
The unfortunate thing about this, and I'll preface this before I go into like really my discussion about the gameplay itself, is the version on Switch 2 is actually a Switch 1 native version. And it seems like maybe Sony San Diego, who makes MLB The Show, does not have a Switch 2 dev kit, or maybe they got it too late to implement it into this year's version. But it is an ugly version of this game. That is the disclosure there, or the disclaimer here as we talk about this game. That I'm overall positive on MLB The Show 26, but unless you only have a Switch or Switch 2, you probably don't want to play it here. You probably want to play it on PS5 or Xbox Series X. But that said,
I'm confused why they don't bring this series to PC. I think there'd be a lot of players out there that would want to play it on PC.
My thought is that they were strong-armed into adding it to other consoles. I think that near the end of the last contract that Sony had with the MLB, I think that the MLB said, we'd really love for our game to be on multiple platforms, not just PlayStation. And we're not going to renew with you unless you bring it to other platforms, which is why they announced. I truly think that's what happened. I don't have any sources telling me that. And and I think it's a good move because MLB The Show has consistently been the best sports franchise, the most consistently good sports franchise in the entire games industry. Like NBA 2K has good years and it has bad years. Madden has good years and has bad years. EA Sports FC, previously FIFA, good years and bad years. NHL,
you know what I've discovered with all these sports games? It's always the monetization stuff that just gets so cluttered and silly. It's never the core play of the games. That's always fun, but it's the preponderance of all of this store crap that tarnishes the experience. It just does, unless that's what you're there for.
That's particularly true with NBA 2K. Like NBA 2K should be a free-to-play game, not a $70 game the way they sell it, because you go through the city, there's ads for Nike and State Farm, and freaking Jake from State Farm was a rendered character that you talked to in one of the games.
Nuts.
And it's just like, this game should absolutely be a free-to-play game. It's a great game. Like all of my reviews that I write about NBA 2K are like, as long as you are on the court, it's incredible. It's everything else that is cumbersome and takes away from the overall product.
And one of the things that I can't stand about that whole thing too is like the city, like it runs at 30 frames per second or something too, right? So it
runs like garbage.
Yeah, it takes you out of this beautiful on-the-court experience, and then it puts you in this murky, muddy, slippery thing. And the promise was that it was going to feel like Grand Theft Auto when you went into but it sure doesn't. But we're talking about baseball.
Yeah, so MLB The Show has a little bit of that, right? Like they have the Diamond Dynasty mode where you can use like your credits to buy card packs or cards or whatever. That's not a mode I typically spend a lot of time in. But that said, I did have some fun with it when I was doing the review, because there are so many different ways. Like you can play online to earn coins, or you can play single player. There's like conquest mode where you're going through and like it's like a board game. You roll dice and like you kind of clack, like you have 6 moves because you rolled a 6. But so does like your this like kind of like boss character also has a dice or a die that he's rolling, and he can try to catch up to you. So you're going around trying to collect as many spaces. That's a fun little like mini game to play. And then as you come across challenge nodes that you don't know where they are, you get thrown into like these very specific game situations. It's like, all right, there's 1 out in the 9th, you're down by 2, you got to come back and win the game. And it's like, okay, that's cool. Like that. And like, if you succeed, you get like boosts and buffs for your next thing. And if you fail, you get, nerfs to your characters or your players in the next challenge, or like, all your players are going to be -5 contact for the next 2 challenges. And it's like really cool the way it builds or kind of avalanches on you as you go through that. So that's fun. And it does play into like the social media culture that we have right now, where you're ripping packs and you're opening and seeing what you get. Like that also is fun. My favorite stuff is the franchise mode and Road to the Show, which are the taking control of a full team and running them over the course of several seasons. That's always my favorite in any sports game. And Road to the Show is my other favorite mode, where it's a single player. You're taking control of a single baseball player and following their career from high school all the way up to the pros. And it's very cool. It's very RPG inspired. So like, you have a good game, you get a bunch of experience. You can funnel that into, all right, I want to be a better contact hitter. I want to be a better power hitter, a better base runner, a better fielder, whatever you're trying to build up. and you only go into the game when your player is involved. So like you're at bats, so you can really like fly through the season, right? And franchise does a cool thing with this as well. They got rid of this, my favorite thing, which is called March to October, which tried to instill like an overarching narrative over the games that you played, where like in the early iterations of it, they were really ambitious, where they had like a dugout reporter being like, they've lost like 5 of their last 7 games. They're really trying to come back. And it's like, it was a really immersive, like broadcast style experience.
And they dropped it.
They kind of watered it down the last couple of years, where it was more about like the momentum angle, where it's like, all right, the last 5 games you were riding high on momentum. It's time to see how the next several games are going to play. And it would like insert you into a tense situation. And if you succeeded, it would boost your momentum for the remaining sim games for like the next like 5 or 6 games. And if you failed, it would give you negative momentum. So it would get like hot and cold kind of on a meter. They got rid of that completely. Now what they do is when you sim through it, you can set what conditions you want to be entered into the game. So you can play the full game if you want, or you can be like, don't interrupt this sim unless something big is happening. So it's like, if it's 7th inning or less, if it is a very high importance or medium importance, don't stop the sim and like make me go play this unless it meets these criteria. And then when it does that, you get entered into it, and then that affects your momentum. So it is much more customizable in that regard, because there were sometimes in March to October in previous games where it was like, I don't care about this situation. I don't want to pitch as this player because I don't care about this player. So you can be very specific. And even when it presents you now with like, you can enter the game, here's the situation, you can say, nah, sim that, I don't care about that situation. You didn't have that option in March to October. So there are improvements, but I do miss the greater contextualization that March to October gave you. And there's also other modes, like there's a ton of stuff in MLB The Show.
Did they do the Negro Leagues?
They did, yes. So they did storylines again, where it tells it's the 4th season of them doing the Negro League stuff, which, fantastic. I love that they are highlighting the history of this extremely underrepresented, aware part of baseball history, underserviced part of baseball history. And
it's incredible.
Yeah. They do what we were talking about wanting them to do with the Marvel MaXimum collection, where it's like a little mini documentary included into this, and you get to play through.
There's so much value in the package, the last several years. My question to you about MLB 26 is, do you have a PS5 Pro that you're playing it on?
No, regular PS5.
Okay, because I'm curious if there are even more enhancements if it's starting. Because I think in the last 2 years, they dropped any connection to PS4. So they've shifted it to PS5. But I want them to sort of take us in, with PSSR2, I want them to take us into the best fidelity that they can. I also think it's insane that they don't have a PC version of this. I think people on PC would love it.
I think it's insane they don't have a Switch 2 version of this, because it actually...
Big time.
It runs, I was playing both in TV mode and handheld mode, because I do have the Switch version on my Switch 2. And it runs fine. Like it doesn't like trip up a whole lot. Like there's a couple of times where it transitions in like a cutscene from one animation to like another camera with another animation. In those moments, there's a slight lag that's noticeable. But really the big detriment is in the resolution and like the textures. It is so muddy looking.
Especially, it's so beautiful on PlayStation.
Oh, it's gorgeous on PlayStation. And then you see like the faces, and it feels like you're looking at like faces from a PS3 game when you're playing on Switch. So hopefully next year they will get an actual Switch 2 version going, because it's a shame that like, this is the only like, AAA baseball game on the Switch, and really the only AAA baseball game in town. There are several other baseball franchises, but just like this is the only one that is both AAA and has the MLB license, and it just isn't optimized well for the Switch.
And the Switch 2 has got the horsepower. Like I was super impressed with the Madden port that they put on Switch 2. I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. It had some issues when it first launched, but it was really good. I streamed that and was blown away by it. And I want to see NBA at 60. I want to see FIFA, FC at 60. I want to see,
NHL,
baseball at 60. Yeah, absolutely. But and NHL, like where are the hockey games on Switch at all? Like that's insane. What a underserved market. They could have had a 60 frames per second Switch 1 game. They would have changed some of the issues around, but they could have had a beautiful Switch 1 game.
Yeah.
Anyways, it'll come.
MLB The Show 26 is out now. If you want to check out my full review, you can head over to GameInformer.com. And I think I gave it a 7.75 out of 10. Like, so
Cool.
it's, the way the comparison I drew was even in a down year, you're going to get a good quality game out of MLB The Show. It's like almost like how the Yankees are, where they haven't had a losing season since 1992. So
Yeah.
even on down years, you have a baseline of quality for that team.
Right. Right.
Conversely, the Baltimore Orioles, my team, they have just, completely lived in mediocrity for the last 30 years with a few standout seasons as exceptions. And that is
You're
other
there, man.
sports
You're supporting them.
that's
You
other
got their
sports
back.
franchises, right? Where it's like, okay, we have a really good year, and then the next few years are bad, and then a really good year, and then the next few years are bad. I feel like that is other sports franchises. Whereas the Yankees, they have good years and they have bad years, but there's always that basement that like is higher than some of the ceilings of other franchises, right? That is
Yeah.
MLB The Show. As much as I hate to like sing the praises of the New York Yankees, my least favorite sports team on the planet, I think that MLB The Show kind of has some parallels there, where it's just like that you're going to get at least a quality product, whether it's a good version or a bad version. I think this one is more of a down year than like an up year,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
still a very good sports game in general, even with those caveats I gave about the Switch performance.
I say that about almost all of the sports games, like all of the major league sports titles, NBA and Madden and NHL and FC. They're all really solid games at their core. They're all fun to play. They get the fundamentals right, but they clutter it up, and sometimes they take away features but I know that the hardcores that follow the real life sports also have a lot of expectations for each of them. But the thing that I always think about is, like, if you really love these sports and you would want to go to see a real life game, go to an arena or whatever, and sit down and buy a ticket, it's going to cost you more than the price of just the cost of this one game. And you're going to be able to play it by yourself or with friends for a long, long time. There's a lot of value there.
I mean, depending on where you sit, it's going to cost you more than buying a Switch 2 and this game, because like
Yeah.
if you're trying to get decent seats these days, like anything, whether
Yeah.
it's a concert or a sporting match or whatever, it is going
Yes.
to be multiple hundreds of dollars, especially if you're taking somebody else. Like if you have
Yeah.
kids or a partner or just a group of friends, that is going to be multiple hundreds of dollars unless you're sitting with your back up against the wall in the upper deck.
And, we talk about live service and stuff. I think live service kind of works with sports games because there is an ephemeral quality to them. We're not, racing to go back and play, baseball 2003. We move on. Maybe MLB Slugfest or something like that. But it's less about the sim experience. It really is tied to the moment and to the time period and the players that are actually playing the game at that moment. I think we look back at the 16-bit stuff with some love and there's some charm there, playing NHL or something like that back in the day, or old Madden or something. But I think that this is that rare genre in games where, okay, the ripping of cards kind of fits with the whole sports collecting kind of thing about it. And it is about checking in every season and sort of playing along with the story of the season if you love the sports. I just love the games. I love the way that these things have played, going back all the way to when NHL and Madden launched and FIFA launched on the Sega Genesis. I was like, oh my God, these are so fun. And now they're just way more complex and sophisticated, but they're also engineered to get as much money out of you as possible. So I stay away from all that.
Victor, you don't have the outline to this episode. I don't share the outline with my guests typically.
Yeah.
So you do not have access to what I'm talking about. But you gave me another perfect segue into the next game, the final game that we are going to be talking about here. That is a game called Basketball Classics.
Cool.
It is another sports game, as the name implies. It's been on PC since about 2019, it looks like.
Okay.
And it is a love letter to the 8-bit games, the 8-bit basketball games and sports games back in like the NES days.
Right
And
on.
it came to Switch this week. And basically, you were talking about different eras. This gives you basically like approximations, unlicensed versions of classic NBA teams throughout the years. So there's a story mode, and you go in there, and it almost looks like a Mega Man boss select screen where there's 5 teams. You're playing as a team called the Scrubs, and there's
Okay.
5 teams, and like the first one is like the 89. It just says 89 Chicago, and you're like, okay, and you go in there, and it's like, all the names say point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center, right? Like there's no
Okay.
substitutions, nothing like that. It's a very high up camera, so like you're looking almost like isometric view at like these very small sprites running around. I wish it was 16-bit instead of 8-bit style,
Yeah.
because I do think 16-bit was kind of like a pinnacle in the
Oh,
sports
it was
genre.
amazing. Yeah, it
So
was amazing.
hopefully there's like a Basketball Classics 2 or something that comes out, because I loved those Genesis basketball games.
Yeah.
But like this is fun for what it is, and it's a very simple game of basketball. You're not going to be having scores. I mean, presumably, maybe I'm just not good at this game yet. I've only played a few games of it, but you're not going to be having scores that are like 115 to 98 or whatever. Like I think my final score was like 42 to 33 or something like that.
Okay. Okay.
So it's very straightforward.
Got to earn the buckets.
Yeah, you can select a play as you're going, and what that does is like, so like there's 3 lanes that appear after on the court after you get a rebound or the possession changes and you're dribbling down, and when you choose like pick and roll or something like that, it will, or isolation, it'll fast forward you to the top of the key, and then you can execute that play as soon as you call it. Or you
Mm.
can avoid those and just dribble up in real time and do that. But it's all about passing around, finding the right player to shoot and getting them open, because like the defense is also very contentious. And then also, if you go in for a dunk, there's a fun little mini game where you can go in and like you have like a set number of moves that you can do as your character is going towards the rim in slow motion. It zooms in like kind of like old NBA Jam style cutscene, or not
Cool.
NBA Jam. NBA Jam had like the FMV style cutscenes, but like an old style like NES, SNES, like
Yeah.
pixel
Yeah.
art cutscene, and zoom
Yes.
into them, and you're controlling like up, down, around, doing spins and everything. And your defender also has a set number of moves that they can block. And it's actually kind of hard to get a dunk in if you're in traffic, because it's easy to get blocked, which I
That's
like
so
that. There's
cool.
like a little mini game there. And then also, I am such a sucker. We'll end on this. Such a sucker for games that don't have like license like athletes, but allow
Yeah.
you to edit them however you want. So like there's
Big time.
multiple versions of Los Angeles, there's multiple versions of Chicago, there's multiple versions of Boston. You can go in there and be like, okay, I'm gonna name this. So I went and did like the 95 Chicago team, and I did like, this is, and it's just last name. So it's like, all right,
It's
Jordan,
Rodman and
Pippen,
yeah.
Rodman, Longley,
Yeah.
and then I did Ron Harper as their point guard.
Wicked.
But it was just cool to be able to go in and do that. And it's like, all right, 2004 Los Angeles, I bet I can name all those guys, and like so on and so forth. It's such a cool like workaround to like, oh, we don't have it reminds me of Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Major League Baseball back on
Yeah.
SNES,
Yeah.
where it was like,
Yeah.
we don't have any players' rights aside from Ken Griffey Jr. So we're just going to make all the teams but have fake players in it. And that's basically what they did. And all the teams, they are very much like the same colors and everything. But if you don't like Chicago being red, black, and white, you can change them to be whatever color you want. You can rename them. You can change what year it's supposed to be. So
That's
if like
cool.
you look at that and there's like 5 different Chicago teams spread out throughout like the eras, and you were like, oh, I wish that like, they have 89 and 95. I really liked that. I don't know, like 2002 Chicago team, which I don't think was.
Does the art in the game change as you go into different eras? Because that would be a
No, it's
cool way
all
to
the
do it.
same. It's always the same, but you're editing this like the very rudimentary sprite as well. You edit like the player's like kind of profile picture that pops up when they have possession.
Oh, that's
So it
cool.
kind of can look like them, and like you can add different facial hair as well. So yeah, like there's reasonable customization, but not overwhelming like you get in like MLB The Show.
Oh
So
man,
it's
those classic sports games, there is an undeniable charm to some of those as well. I got to check this out.
Yeah, I mean, it just hit Switch, and I think Switch 2 and every other major platform. Let's see, how much is this game? Because it can't be very much, but it's from Acclaim actually.
Cool.
Our old
The
friends
new
at
Acclaim.
Acclaim are publishing it. Yeah, the
Yeah.
old friends in the new way that they exist. It's only $10 on
Cool.
Switch, and it's
Cool.
available on Switch and Switch 2. It runs well enough. It looks like the everything how many players is this? One or two players. Okay, so you can't have like a full group, but like I'm having a great time with it. I was like, I when I saw the graphics, I was like, I was hoping for 16-bit instead of 8-bit, but I'll take it. You know, hopefully that it sells well enough that we get a sequel and they leap into the 16-bit era from there.
That's a great idea. It'd be cool if I mean, it'd be such a trip to go through the ages. Like as you're going into new seasons, the graphics get a little bit better, and suddenly you're in the. Cool. Wouldn't that be neat? That would be a totally wild way to look at a game like that.
So here are the key features, and then we'll wrap up this episode because we are going quite long. Decades of rosters with 175 plus teams. 1,000 plus players with individualized attributes, seamless play calling. We'll skip a couple of these. Retro vibes galore. I can definitely attest to that. No virtual currency, no pay to win, no microtransactions ever, and simplified 3-button gameplay, which also, it was very easy to pick up and play.
You know, you got some stuff to deal with in the game industry if those are bullet points. You know, and Crimson Desert even had a lot of those similar kinds of bullet points recently in AAA, right? So it's you know, I think we hit a ceiling with a lot of that stuff. I think there's a little bit more acceptance in sports gaming because of the different audience, and they're, you know, collecting sports cards is pretty fun in its own right. I don't fall in for any of that, but I can understand it. But I think we hit the ceiling on how much of this live service microtransaction BS we can tolerate these days, you know? Yeah.
Well, I don't have a review for this one to plug, but you know, maybe I'll write something about this in some point in the future. But you know, it's out right now. It came out last week, actually, so it's not technically a release that comes out this week like the rest of these games. I guess MLB The Show wasn't either. I just wrote my review this week because they didn't provide code ahead of time for that one. Plus, I was at GDC, so it's been a little bit late on that. But that's all we have to talk about today. Victor, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of All Things Nintendo.
I love it, man. I love it. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast, and I know we got into a lot of stuff, but this was a big week for the video game industry. Lots of big stories.
Episode.
Yeah.
And thank you so much to everyone for listening. As you know, my Patreon and the associated Discord server are the best ways to get any questions or comments in, but you can also get in touch with me at brian@allthingsnintendo.com or hit me up on Blue Sky or Instagram at Brian P. Shea. Victor, tell everyone where they can find you online.
Well, you can find most of our content on our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/EPNTV. I'm Batwing on Instagram. It's The Electric Playground on TikTok. I'm on Blue Sky as well. I think it's Victor Lucas on Blue Sky. And I'm still on the old place at Victor_Lucas if you're still over there. But YouTube's probably the best place to find us. And we stream all the time on YouTube and on twitch.tv/EPN as well.
That is our show for this week. Thank you again for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode of All Things Nintendo. Before we wrap up this recording, I just want to give a very special thank you to the $10 patrons of this show. Alex Stadnick, Andy Junkins, Ben Richland, Chad Brecky, Chaps My Ass, Derek Sigmund, Dusty Beeman, Ian T. Clark, Jawar Hello, Johnny Five, Jose Villalobos, Joshua DeProy, KC Radio Man, Cody Gibson, Creeper 207, Ozman83, Paul at Drunk on Mako, Pratable, Rob McCann, Bobby Mac 265, Robert Sosa, Roberto Nieves, Roger Reichart, Russell Sayer, Smithy Poo, Zane Sink, and Zek 3 Sword Sama. I know I say this every week, but it really is because of these folks that I can continue doing this week in and week out. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for your continued support of this show.